I didn't know if you wanted me to show my face, so I was debating that. Would you like me to show my face, or can
Entirely
I
up to
keep
you,
it?
my friend. Entirely up to you. Whatever
Okay.
blows your hair back.
Just tell me when you want me to get talking.
Yep, yep, yep. Welcome in. So give me just a half a second. I'm still getting all the buttons pushed, all the clicky clicks clicked. Do me a favor and say a few words for me.
Hello, hello. Ooh, testing, testing.
Beautiful. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Energy. Long time viewer, many time chatter. Tell everybody who you are and why you're here.
So I am an 18-year-old. I live in Mississippi. I'm studying finance in community college. I am passionate about philosophy, physics, economics, and politics, and I am interested in talking more about big ideas.
Very cool, very cool. That seems to me like the right thing to talk about. Oh, you know what I don't have? I'll tell you what I don't have. Sorry, give me one split second, Energy. I've got one more thing I gotta do here. I don't know if it's gonna happen, but I figure it's worth a try. Oh, nope. Stream elements. So, as everybody knows, we have recently tried to up our game just a little bit. And one of the things that we're trying to do is make it so that, yeah, there we go. Skadoosh, control copy. Oh, no, wait. Shit. Okay, hold on. Fuck. How do I do this? Okay, give me one second. Give me one second. Dashboard, no. Activity feed, no. Although that's probably important for me to have too. Stream elements. Activity feed. There we go. Beautiful. That's cool. So I'm trying to create my pop-up window for everything. Almost done. So where is the damn thing? Ah, there we go. It's elements, right? I think. I appreciate your faith in us, Mida. I appreciate your faith in us. All right, so let me see a thing. So I'm going to click that. I'm going to click that. I'm going to call
And sorry
this.
for being a couple minutes late. I was just talking with some people on a Discord VC call, and I was just saying goodbye to them.
Yeah, no
And
worries.
I also saw you went soon.
Yep, you don't owe me anything, my friend. Okay, there we go.
Yeah.
But I appreciate the thought. So let's see. There we go. Emotes, yes. Alert box, yes. Chat box, yes. Tips, yes. I think. So hopefully, and I won't know until somebody actually decides to try and do it, but there should be the ability for people to tip to add questions to the conversation. Like I said, this is a brand new phenomenon. We're still testing it out, and I've never done it from this computer. We got it all set up in the hotbox for the actual DMZ. So I haven't had the chance to test it out in here, so it may or may not work. Not trying to grift hard and be like, please, 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 everybody, donate money. But there's going to be a thing that scrolls, hopefully, and tells everybody how to do it. So that's it. Yeah. Okay. So Pander is has been, and I'm only using that name because of how long we have been having conversations about this particular subject matter. And I try my best to avoid this subject as much as possible. So, for those of you who do not know, Energy here has been very, very patient, waiting for me to be willing to engage in these subjects with them. Now, I'm going to set a couple of quick ground rules for you, Energy. I hope that's amenable to you. I can't imagine why it wouldn't be. So, I would like for you to do what you can to try not to speed speak. I can, especially whenever it's something that I know a lot about, I can talk at a mile a minute as well, but we're not just trying to make sure that I process this. We also want to make sure the audience processes this. So let's make sure and try and keep it at a medium pace. And then second of all, doing what you can to try to avoid intentionally using unnecessarily jargony terms, or at least understand that I'm going to repeatedly jump in and ask you to explain or clarify if you are using terms and phrases that I or the average person would not be familiar with. Does that sound reasonable to you?
Yeah, and can I just say one thing related to the
Shoot.
second gun rule, just as clarification?
Mm-hmm.
There are some concepts I'm going to explain which I do not believe you're going to understand immediately without further meditating on it.
Sure.
That is the nature of philosophical concepts.
Sure.
So I'll explain them to the best of my ability, but I can't promise that I can explain them to you like you're 5.
For sure. But I also need for you to understand that I'm going to be pushing back on anything that I disagree with. I am not going to take anything you say as just true because it came out of the box, right? So just understand that that is also, yeah, give me the for dummies version, but also understand that I am going to do some pushback as needed. So again,
Okay.
I think we're all on the same page here. I think this is going to be a wonderful, productive conversation. I'm very much looking forward to it. So
Me too.
I do hope that we can also, and I know that you had mentioned that you're probably going to, or your inclination is going to be to diversify into things like physics and such. I would really rather, if we can, stay as focused on philosophy as possible. I get, for what it's worth, just so you know, I was watching the Loop Quantum Gravity video earlier, and perhaps if we stay on topic with philosophy and we get through all of that, I would be down for us to kind of review some of the other more, or the tangential stuff that you think is related, but like I said, let's stick with philosophy as much as possible. Sound good?
Yeah, the only thing is I might use examples from physics when making a point about metaphysics to
Sure.
explain very contemporary views, but that won't be until we've laid the groundwork, because I do want to discuss things in the context of a history of philosophy, going over the basic concepts as how they formed in ancient Greece to modern times. And then
Sure.
when we're talking about modern philosophy, I might bring up here's how modern philosophers interpret new findings in physics with their work. Is
So
that
I'm
okay?
curious, it is. Did you feel how your tempo was increasing throughout the course of that sentence? I ask because we are not in a rush. You do not have we've got 3 hours to get through this material. So like I said, do not feel like you need to try to get it all out before you get interrupted. Do not feel like you got to get it all out before you get ignored. You have my undivided attention for the rest of this. I want to actually understand and keep up and process. So just be careful about that. But yes, I do absolutely understand that there are going to be analogies and et cetera, et cetera. So all right. So
Yeah,
give
not
me
just
the.
analogies, but examples.
Yep.
But
No.
yeah.
I get it. So give me the basic premise, the very first starting point concept that you want us to peel out.
So the first concept I would like to go about is basically justification in epistemology, which is how do we know what we know?
Okay. So I will. Yeah, and how you want to do this is kind of up to you, right? Ancom is already starting to twitch on Twitch. So epistemology is simply just your understanding or the framework for your belief system, correct?
Yes, it's how we come to know what we know.
Yep. All right, cool. So,
And it's also, just to clarify, there's one more thing that epistemology deals with, which is how we know what we know, and is knowledge even possible, and if so, to what extent?
sure. And I know
Because
I've heard the term the Agrippa's trilemma thing, and the idea that you can never truly know anything because everything, if you chase it down the rabbit hole far enough, comes down to well, it's just what this is what we have to say is true. Like everything comes down, and that's an axiom if I'm using my terminology correctly. It always comes down to an axiom, something that is a presupposition, something that we both have to accept as being true in order for us to be able to have any sort of a meaningful conversation. Is that correct?
So, axiom, what an axiom is debated among philosophers. The definition of axiom that I use, and not all philosophers use this definition, is an axiom is the starting point for any knowledge. So it's not necessarily a presupposition because it can be gained through experience. Because you can say, well, my starting point is sensory evidence, and sensory evidence is self-validating. Or I say whatever is logically necessary for sensory evidence is. So there are empirical. You can make empirical arguments for your axioms. So I would not say they're presuppositions in the sense of being independent of sensory evidence, but they are not confined to any particular sensory evidence, and so they have to be accepted on the basis of one argument, basically. Does that make sense?
It does. Take it down about 10% speed, but yes, I understand what you're saying. So in other words, it can go through some sort of evidentiary discovery. It doesn't necessarily have to be something that we just take for granted.
Yes.
Okay, got it.
Depending on the philosopher, but that is a view in philosophy.
Okay. All right, I can work with that. I like that. Actually, I'm gonna, for the time being, grant that works for me, and I will use that as my definitions as well. So, moving forward, justification and epistemology. How do we know what we know? Go on.
Okay, so is it okay if I bring out some of the history of this? Because I would like to bring out the history of the ideas and then sort of relate them into the different theories and where
Sure.
I stand on this.
Yep. As long as, again, as long as we keep it at the medium pace, I can follow. Keep going.
So it all starts in a civilization known as ancient Greece.
Yep.
Basically, you have before Socrates a man named Thales, Thales. What Thales did is he was the first philosopher,
Spell that
and
again
what
one more
he did,
time. Thales.
ES.
Okay, cool.
What Thales did was instead of looking for supernatural justification from the gods of ancient Greece, he looked for rational argumentation for his cosmology.
Love it. I'm here for it. I'm a Thalian. Keep going.
Okay. Then we go up to the three founders of Western philosophy, which are Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle.
Yep.
Socrates and Plato, as
I used to eat a
understand
lot of
them
Play-Doh as a kid.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, it was a bad joke. Keep going.
Yeah, eating Play-Doh or reading Play-Doh can both be very difficult on the mind. But in any event, so Socrates and Plato had the idea that there's a world of form, or okay, Plato had this idea and it's attributed by Plato to Socrates, but we don't know if Socrates believed it. So I'll just say Plato believed that there's a world of forms, and that the way we come to know this world of forms is that the world of forms imprints itself on us before birth, and we are born with knowledge of the world of forms.
Okay, so hold on. Let's dig into that one. World of forms. What does he mean by forms?
So a form is an essence that of a category. So for example, we take the form human being, and that encompasses me, you, Joe Biden, Michelle Obama, Elon
We
Musk.
exist in the human form.
Yes, and this is the
Okay.
essence that makes us all humans.
Cheers.
He
Okay.
believes that there's another world which is outside of space and time where these forms exist and these essences sort of implant themselves onto us in the space and time world that we live in.
So we were human before we began to exist.
Well, we were human before we began to exist in space and time. We still existed, but we existed in the world of forms.
Okay.
As like a form.
So was Plato considered to be a religious or spiritual philosopher?
Well, religious, but not in the sense of Judeo-Christian religion. So
Okay.
he did not believe.
What did Plato believe was our state before we entered this form?
So my understanding is that Plato believed that the world of forms is eternal. It's outside of space and time.
Oh, I see. So I see. I thought the world of forms was what we are in now. You're saying that the world of forms was before before we formed.
Yeah,
Okay.
we live in the imperfect world of the physical universe, but before that we lived in this immaterial outside of space and time world of forms.
Okay.
Does that make
Yep,
sense?
yep, yep.
Does that make sense? Yeah,
The world of forms was like the ether before. Got it. That's what I was looking for. So continue.
yeah. Now you have a fellow named Aristotle who says that there's not a world of forms, whereas there is one reality, which is the world we perceive with our five senses, and we come to know the essences of things in reality through perceiving them. And so, for Aristotle, what makes a man, or a woman, or a human, or a dog, is basically we have an essence, but it's immanent within the material form we have.
So basically, our awareness, our self awareness, is our self.
Um, no.
Say it. No, okay, say it
So
again. Say it again.
So it's like this. Instead of our essence, instead of what makes us us being this otherworldly thing, it's that we have a what he calls hylomorphism, where matter is formed with an essence which is immanent within this world, not another world. So he rejected the dualism of Plato.
Okay. You know what?
Does this make
Yeah,
sense?
no, it does. It does. So far, I'm generally on board with Aristotle. Aristotle is winning, although I have been told that my overall appeal and my approach to things is Socratian in nature. So tell me where Socrates fits into this.
So Socrates is a man whose views we do not know a lot about because all of the writings we have are of Plato's writings. There are some people who interpret Socrates as having believed in Plato's world of forms, but other people just think that he was just in dialogue with people and sort of skeptical about things and didn't really have a strong opinion. So I don't necessarily know what Socrates' final opinion on things was, but his main thing was the Socratic method, which is we should have dialogue with other people and question assumptions.
Love it, my king. Go on.
Okay, so we have two groups of people later on in the history of. Oh, okay, no, I'm not going to get that far. Now we're going to transition to the medieval period. A fellow named Augustine, Augustine. He is considered to my understanding, the first major philosopher of the Scholastic period. That's
I know.
SCHOLASS.
I know how to
Yes.
spell scholastic. All right, so real quick, and this is just because the chat has already said something about this. Uh, we've already talked about Kant, and we can't get into Kant. Anyway, Chinese philosophers, you were referring to the Greek philosophers as being the first philosophers, but wasn't the Chinese philosophers and the Eastern Asian philosophers around long before that? Like Confucius
So I'm
and.
not familiar with the timeline. My
Okay.
understanding is they were around a similar time period. But the reason that I did not reference the Eastern philosophers is just because I don't know anything about them,
That's just
and
not
I
your
would not
study of
feel
school of
comfortable.
thought. Got you. Beautiful. I appreciate that. Move on. Augustine, Scholastic period. Keep cooking.
Okay. Augustine was influenced by a fellow named Plotinus, Plotinus, who was the founder of a school of thought known as Neoplatonism. So Neoplatonism is the belief that instead of there being a world of forms where the essences of things exist, rather there is just a one, which is the ground of being, the ground of existence, and this one is outside of space and time. And so instead of there being a world of forms with many different ones, many different essences of human and dog and tree and pizza, there's just one, which is the ground of all existence. And oneness is kind of like basically a secularized form of God, basically. Does that make sense?
It does. Basically like a non-spiritual god, almost like more of a metaphysical, scientific explanation for the woo-woo.
Yeah, it's like the ultimate. It's the ground of it's a thing that makes all of space and time real. That's not in it itself in space and time.
Wouldn't that just be our perceptions? Okay, keep going though. Yep, following along.
Okay, what Augustine did was he took Plotinus's theory of the one and took this Neoplatonist idea that the essence of existence is outside of space and time and integrated that with Christianity by saying that God is the one that Plotinus was talking about, and basically, and so we live in a semi-real, basically shadow of God.
Hmm. You said that was Plotinus who did that? No, Augustine did that.
That's Augustine.
Augustine took Plotinus's idea of there being just one existence and used that as defining God as that one existence, right?
Yes, and that we live and that the existence we live in is only semi-real.
Okay, semi-real how?
So in the sense that it's not ontologically fundamental in the sense that like it does not have it's just not it's kind of hard to because I don't really fully understand the position myself because I don't think it's logically coherent, but it's just semi-real in the sense that he would not consider this world to be the same or even analogous to the type of existence that God has.
Well, of course. I mean, if you believe in
Yeah.
even in the secular version of God that you were just talking about, it stands to reason that that God would exist in a plane other than ours, right?
Yeah, but it's just the idea that our plane is less real in a sense. It's like kind of an illusion, and not in the sense that it doesn't exist, but in the sense it in a sense of it being not necessary or not having it's a complicated view, but it's the idea that our world is somehow less real.
Then God's real. God's world.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, it's less. If it,
Like
I don't understand myself.
we all exist in a God's dream, basically.
Yeah, basically.
God dreams and it created the universe as we know it.
Yeah,
All right.
basically.
Okay.
Okay.
Keeping up.
Then we go on to a fellow named Thomas Aquinas.
Ooh, I
I
know that
presume you
name.
know how to spell Tom? Yeah. Do you know how to spell Aquinas? Or do you want me to write it out for you?
Aquinus, right?
AS at the end.
AS.
Yeah.
Got it.
Okay. So Thomas Aquinas was a saint who integrated Aristotelianism with the Catholic Church. So
Used Augustine's thinking of combining those two to establish the modern Christian idea of what God is.
no. So what Aquinas did was Aquinas was to Aristotle what Augustine was to Plotinus, which is he integrated the Greek philosophers with Catholic theology, but it was predominantly Aristotle he was ripping off, not Plato or Plotinus.
Okay.
Okay, so for Aquinas, he's taking from Aristotle the things like the four causes, things like the essence existence distinction, um, and what he did is instead of the Augustinian Neoplatonic view of knowledge was that God revealed to us knowledge, and that's how we know. So it's faith in God. For Aquinas, we do not have innate knowledge given to us by God. All knowledge begins with the senses, like Aristotle believed.
You said who said the
Aqu-
senses? Aquinas said the
all
senses?
Aquinas was taking from Aristotle the idea all knowledge begins with the senses.
Okay. So our perception. Got you.
Yes. So instead of faith, he made irrational arguments for God.
I see. Okay, so perception creates reality, basically. And
No, it's perception gives us knowledge of reality.
perception. Okay. And you're saying what was the second thing you said after that?
And then he used what he saw as rational
To
arguments
me,
for God. So he thought you
yeah.
could
Okay.
you could prove God using reason and logic.
Got you. This sounds like the stuff that the dude with the Irish accent keeps fucking going off about in every platform that anybody holds still for him. Okay. So, rational arguments for God. Is that I feel like we're getting to the part
Yeah.
that we were aiming for. Is that correct? This is
Yeah.
that's the argument that we're
No.
looking for?
Well, I'm not really interested in giving you like I don't agree with Aquinas' arguments for God, but I'm just saying what his position was that you could make a rational
Do
argument.
you do
So
you
he goes on,
know yeah, do you know the off the top of your head what his rational arguments for the existence of God were?
yeah, so he has something known as the five ways. So the five I forgot the five ways off the top of my head. Um, I'm gonna look them up real quick.
Yeah, yeah.
So okay. The five ways are okay. Let me think about this. So the first argument, okay, I'm looking this up. So the first argument is the unmoved mover. So in the world, we see that some things are changing. Whatever is changing is being changed by something else. If that which is changing is itself changed, then it is changed by something else. But this chain of changing cannot be infinitely long. So there must be something that changes others without itself changing. This thing that doesn't change that causes all other things to change is God.
This feels like somebody who is just trying to explore the uses, the potential definitions of the word change. Say it all again one more time, because, again, after the sixth use of the word change, my brain kind of started making a buzzing noise. Started from scratch. All change.
Okay, so premise one, we see some things change.
Yes.
Premise two, whatever is changing is being changed by something else.
Something has to change that which changes. Okay, hold on. Let me play with this. Because, as just off the top of my head example, even if something like a leaf falls off of the tree, an argument could be made that it is the death of the tree or the leaf, the changing of the seasons, the wind blew it off. Like you could figure out exactly what caused the change in the state of that leaf. I'm following along. Keep going. Number three.
Number three, this chain of changing cannot be infinitely long. So there must be something that changes everything else without itself being changed.
Why can it not be infinitely long?
I don't agree with
What's
the
his,
premise.
yeah, no, I know,
I'm
but
just
his, just so you know, real quick, and this is the only time I'm going to mention this, but you know how I've told you many, many times that right there, what just happened is the reason that I have issues discussing philosophers is just because I need to, if I push back on what Aquinas said, Aquinas is not here to defend what he said. If I'm asking deeper questions into why Aquinas thought what Aquinas thought, then at some point we're going to reach a point where it serves no purpose because Aquinas is not here to defend his thinking. So I would love to know what his logic of why it can't be infinitely long. It's possible I'd agree with it. That does not sound obviously true to me. You see what I mean? Like it seems to me like it could be
so
infinitely long. So
his argument, as I understand it, is that it would if there's an infinite amount of causation in the past, it would take an infinite amount of events to get to the present, and you can't have an infinite amount of events to get to the present
because he operates under the idea that there had to have been an eventual starting point, that something had to have happened first in order for it to lead to the change. Okay, got it. Yep, that I
yeah, but I just want to clarify that the reason I say I don't necessarily agree with Aquinas is what I'm giving you is the basic history of philosophy and the concepts. Not
Yes.
saying that I agree with them.
No, 100%. I
the
appreciate
basic
that. Yeah. I know that you are not trying to indoctrinate me into your beliefs. I'm just trying to understand these other people's beliefs. And again, I personally, just my own What seems true to me is that things are circular and that it is possible that the snake is eating its tail. But again, number 4.
Okay. And therefore, the thing that is kind of like the first cause in this temporal sequence of events is what we call God.
I see. The first event at the beginning of the chain is referred to as God. Now, for what it's worth, since we're going to continue, like I said, I'm trying to process this audibly while I'm going through this. So that actually does speak to me, because that is one of the things I've said before. I think that people try to put a name or a perception or some sort of an idea for what God is. God would just be whatever made whatever we are. And that could just as easily be aliens, that could be some sort of a extra dimensional quantum species that we don't understand. That could be literally just fucking happenstance. So again, yeah, ultimately that does make sense. Whatever caused it is what we're referring to as God. We do not necessarily need to give it some sort of anthropomorphism or identity beyond the fact that it was the beginning of the chain of events that led to us. I like that, actually. I'm going to write that down real quick. God is the beginning of the chain of events that led to us. Not necessarily sure that I agree with it, but I like that as a summary. Yeah, literally, I wasn't going to call him out, but yes, that's the person I said. The dude with the Irish accent keeps talking about this shit every chance he gets. All right, go on. Please, Energy. I'm following along, and I'm enjoying this way more than I was prepared for.
Okay. Then we have something known as the scientific revolution and the early modern period.
Yay, fucking science. Scientific revolution. Viva la revolution.
Okay. So there was a fellow named Galileo Galilei.
Heard of him. He liked to draw pictures.
Yeah. So he is the founder of what we call the early modern period.
Okay. Keep going.
Okay. The early modern period saw a bifurcation philosophy between two schools of thought with 3 major members. We have the rationalist and the empiricist.
The rationalist and the empiricist. That sounds like a podcast. Empiricist. Yeah. There we go. That's too many eyes.
Yeah. So the rationalist thought that there's innate knowledge like Plato, but unlike Plato, they believe that this innate knowledge is not of another world of forms, but of this reality.
Okay, so there are things that that are true because we know them inherently.
Yes, independent. So it's not that they come from perception, but they're sort of baked into the mind.
We just know it because we know it because we know it. Got it. Yes, and the empiricist needs imperial evidence, right? They need actual evidence. Yep.
Yes. So the empiricists thought that we have all knowledge begins with the senses, like Aristotle. Okay. So the 3 major philosophers who are associated with rationalism are Rene Descartes.
Hold on. Needs evidence. All right, go on. So Descartes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Spinoza. Spinoza.
Okay.
And Leibniz. Leibmn. No, sorry, not MN. Leibniz.
You're just making shit up now, bro. All right, I'm just kidding. All right, keep going. Descartes, let's start with him.
So Descartes, is someone whose philosophy I'm not super familiar with because I haven't read the only one of these people who I've read is Leibniz, so I'll get that off. But I have listened to lectures about the other guys. Um, so Descartes, as I understand him, is the guy who said that our senses could be naughty.
And play tricks on
We
us.
can't start. Yeah, our senses can be naughty, and so we start with an axiom: cogito ergo sum. I think, therefore I am.
Yep. Okay, so hold on. I just because I want to clarify, are you using the word naughty in this circumstance to be coy, or like is he saying that our senses can be actually like lascivious?
So the senses don't have a will of their own. I'm just saying they, in a sense that
Yep.
they. So so for example, let's say there's an evil demon,
Okay.
and the evil demon is deceiving us. The evil demon could give us sense impression of such as they are. Like we could be hallucinating everything because this evil demon that's causing us to hallucinate.
Got it. Our senses can be deceptive.
Okay. So he says that the way to get out of this is we start with the axiom, I think, therefore I am.
Yep.
And
We've all heard that one.
then, yeah, then what he goes on to say is we we can we know that we're not being deceived because we get a accurate representation of the external world because God is giving us our perceptions. And what he says is that the way to know God is something known as the ontological argument for God, which is something that was pioneered earlier in the scholastic period, but it was revived by him in the modern times. And the ontological argument for God goes like this.
This is still
It's
Descartes.
in Yes.
Okay.
Oh,
Go
I
on.
mean, technically, the ontological argument isn't original to him, but he used this to argue for God. And so what he says is that we can't prove God from evidence because he dispelled with evidence, but we can use rational argumentation to prove God. And the rational argumentation is just strictly logical, which is in all possible worlds there must be there's if God exists in one possible world, that means he must exist in all possible worlds because it's in God's essence to have existence. So because God's essences have existence, if he exists in one possible world, he must exist in all possible worlds. Does that make sense? Not in the sense of agreeing with it, but does the argument like logically make sense?
I'm going to say yes and no because I understand the words you are putting together, but this, and I'm going to use, I think this presupposes the idea of omniscience and omnipotence, right? So, yes, God would exist everywhere if he exists anywhere, assuming that God is our common definition of what we perceive God to be, which is the omnipotent, omniscient deity, as opposed to what we were talking about earlier, where God is just whatever came before. God was two atoms rubbing up against each other, creating a reaction for the first time. So, yes, I understand the argument that if you're going to accept that the possibility of God exists, then it becomes a likelihood very quickly. So, I do understand. I can follow the train of logic. So I disagree with it, but I can follow. Yes.
So, okay. So it, it basically relies on the view of possible worlds. So it's basically the idea that there could be another world where, for example, I don't have hands. Does that make sense?
Sorry, no, I got
Because I can
distracted
think
by
of
chat. Say that again. You have no hands. Why do you have no hands?
so I can conceive of a world that I don't have hands, right?
Perhaps. Sure.
I can think of a world where these hands that I have don't exist, or your hands don't exist, or that this microphone is yellow, or that the coffee has green in it, or whatever. I can think of all sorts of scenarios, or I can think of a unicorn, right?
Okay.
But I can't think of a world without God because God's essence is to exist,
But I can think of a
according
world
to
without
Descartes.
God.
But his essence is existence, so he exists in all possible worlds.
The essence is existence in that person's framing of what God would be. And I disagree with that. and am able to envision a world that does not exist with God or that was not created by God. So again, it relies on the fact that this person presupposes the existence of God, right?
I mean, I don't agree with the argument. I'm just saying what his
Yeah, no,
argument
I know, and
is. But yes.
again, but I just want to make sure that I'm processing the holes in this logic. But okay, all right, keep on cooking.
Okay, so then we have the empiricist. John Locke is the first
Hold on,
guy.
hold on, hold on.
Very
You didn't
brief
talk about
choice,
Spinoza and
Rasha. Yeah.
Leibniz.
Yeah, let's talk about Spinoza and Leibniz. Sorry, I forgot. So Spinoza had a view of God, as I understand it, known as panentheism, which is Panentheism. Spinoza had argued that um, basically there's a substance which is the ground of all other substances, and this substance he calls, I believe the term he uses is natura naturans, which is like nature, but it's basically a self-existent substance, also known as God, where God is the basis of the universe. So it's not that God is transcendent of the universe, but God is kind of is the universe. God is all being and the being of the universe. So he identifies God with nature.
Okay, I actually get that's closer to where I land as well. God is nature. Go on.
His argument for this, as I understand it, is the same as Descartes' argument, where he says that God's essence is existence. But he says that unlike Descartes, he would not appeal to God being transcendent of nature, but because God's essence is existence, he is immanent within nature. He's omnipresent.
So it's reliant on the idea that God is everything. And everything is nature, so God is nature. Got it.
Yeah,
Leibniz.
I mean that's my understanding.
Yep, no, I
No,
understand.
Leibniz is a fellow who I have read. Um, Leibniz also makes the ontological argument for God. He makes some other arguments. So he has a system of metaphysics known as the monadology. That's Monadology. Monadology. And I have read Leibniz's book, The Monadology, so I'm more familiar with that. So, Leibniz argues that what is ontologically fundamental or metaphysically fundamental, what is fundamental in the sense of what exists most fundamentally, is monads. Monads. A monad
That's what's in my
is a
testicles. Sorry, go on.
that's your gonads, but they are indivisible, immaterial, and they are a perspective of an underlying harmony.
Okay. Go on.
So these monads,
It's basically a
to my
structure of
understanding,
reality.
yeah. So each monad contains within it its own perspective of the other monads. So it's defined by its relationship with other monads.
It's real weird, but okay.
His argument for this, as I understand it, is there has to be something which is indivisible, because if something is infinitely divisible, then that means you could divide it an infinite amount of times, and so it can't be infinitely divisible. That's why you have to have something which is indivisible, which he calls a monad.
So I just want to be clear. This person literally made up a word, made up a concept, based his entire framework of reality around a word and an idea and a particle, basically, that he made up.
As far as I can tell, he's the first person to propose this idea. Yes.
Okay. Okay. So he has monads in his monadology, and it is the structure of the underlying harmony of reality.
Yes, and the reason that he argues for this is because if it's infinitely divisible, this means that you'd have to travel an infinite amount of space every time you take a step. So if you take a step and it's infinitely divisible, you travel an infinitely divisible you know amount of space. But in order, there has to be an indivisible atom, basically, which he calls a monad, in order to get past, so when you take a step, you're not traveling an infinite amount of space.
There has to be something that is the smallest measure, unit of measure, the smallest particle that can exist. Now, this was, of course, before they actually knew about atoms and particles and stuff like that, correct?
Yes,
Okay.
to my
So
understanding.
basically, this dude was preconceiving the idea of particle physics and particle reality. Got it.
Yes, although these would be, although I think the monads would be more metaphysical, but yeah, basically, I think there's a lot of parallels between this idea and modern atoms. So can
Okay.
I go? So is it okay now if I go on to the empiricist, or
Yes. All right. Hold on.
okay?
That was all the rationalists.
Yeah, well, there were other rationalists, but those are the three ones who are
No, but
important.
all three of those were the rationalists. All right.
Yeah, all three were rationalists, but not all rationalists were those three.
Sure. I got it. All right. So let me hear the empiricists now.
Okay,
I feel like I'm gonna be team empiricist.
probably are. So John Locke is the first one. I presume you know how to spell the name.
I do. Locke. I'm sorry. CHE, right?
No, CKE.
CKE. Okay, I was right the first time. There we go. John Locke. Go.
Okay, so basically, he says that perceive, um, we perceive and we gain knowledge through perception of sense data. So basically, he says that when instead of having innate knowledge, all knowledge begins with perception of sense data. So I see red, or I see tallness, or I see this, and we have these little packets of sense data which we perceive.
Okay.
He says that the mind, and the mind is what he calls tabula rasa. There's no innate knowledge. Um, so no innate knowledge, and we gain knowledge through perception of sense data. Um, he he believes the self is a collection of memories we have. So what we call our selfhood is the memories we have, basically.
I believe the same thing, so I'm falling in line with Locke so far.
His political philosophy, in his ethics, he says that we have a right to private property because we convert non-value into value. So when I kill a deer, I and I convert something which is not a value to human beings into a value for human beings. Therefore, I'm entitled to it.
I mean, I would argue that it had value to human beings before you killed it, but okay. Got it. I understand the idea. Process something into something new, therefore it's mine.
Yes.
Got it. Next.
So you have another fellow, David Hume. You know how to spell that name?
HUME?
Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds right. Okay, go on.
He says, like Locke, all knowledge begins with the senses, so he agrees with that. Unlike Locke, he is very skeptical. So he says that we cannot he says we cannot know that causality exists because just because we perceive a billiard ball hitting another billiard ball and the second billiard ball moving doesn't prove there's a causal relationship. It just means that these two events are correlated. So no causality for Hume.
Got it.
Okay. He also says that there is no self, really. We just have bundles of sense impression that we call a self. No unified self.
All right.
In his ethics, he believes in something known as the is-ought problem. He believes that no amount of facts can get you into value judgments. There is no objective morality.
All right. This dude's an idiot. Go on.
And that's basically as far as I understand his philosophy. No, and so that's his epistemology,
That's
sense data,
whom.
and skepticism. And in his metaphysics, we don't have access to any sort of necessity or causality, and his ethics, which is no objective morality. Okay, then we get to the third empiricist, George Berkeley.
Sorry, I was just showing chat that we had already talked about something. You said Berkeley.
Yes,
Berkley.
no, Eley.
Berkeley. Got it.
Yeah. So George Berkeley was a bishop, and he agreed with Hume and Locke that all knowledge begins with the senses. We perceive bundles of sense data. He was known as an idealist, Idealist. He believed that since we do not perceive the external world directly, but we perceive sense data, that we could not prove a world independent of the mind, we could only have access to our senses.
Thank you, Goofus. We do not actually know that reality is real because our senses, and I feel like this is about to come back circular, our senses are naughty or are unreliable.
So he's not saying. So what he thinks is that the physical world is dependent on our senses because we have access to our senses over and above the physical world. Whatever the physical world is dependent on our senses.
Yeah. So everything that is real is dependent upon our senses. Reality exists because we perceive reality. It. Yes.
Yes. Then we have a fellow who tries to synthesize a rationalist and empiricist named Immanuel Kant.
Oh, good God. Okay, I heard all about Kant. Go on. This was what Hammer focused on last week or 2 weeks ago. So
Kant synthesizes rationalism and empiricism. What Kant does is he rejects the empiricist notion that our mind is tabula rasa, or without innate content. He believes we have innate content of the mind, but he rejects the rationalist view that the knowledge can be independent of sense data. What he believes is that what we do is we deduce a priori knowledge from sense data. So we look at the sense data we have or the perception we have, and then we deduce from that indirectly the logical requirements for what would cause us to have the sense data to begin with, which is the a priori forms of intuition and categories of the understanding.
Nope. Say it again. Tell me Kant again. Rejects that our mind is that our self is innate. Also rejects that knowledge can only be. Go ahead from there.
So he rejects the empiricist view that we have. We don't have innate knowledge. He believes in innate knowledge.
Okay. Believes in innate knowledge. Got it.
Yes. And we come to know innate knowledge through sense experience. It's wild, I know, but I'll explain it in a second.
No. Actually, this is true. This seems self-evident. So, innate knowledge exists, but it's it comes to us through external influence. However, our understanding and processing of that external influence is the part that is innate. Is that correct? Is that is that the
So
gist?
it's like, so it's we have innate knowledge, and the way the innate knowledge is actually becomes knowledge is after we experience something.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So,
Okay,
okay. Oh, wait
so
a minute.
here's
So, wait,
here's
wait,
how it
wait, wait.
works.
So this is more like the knowledge was already there. It just didn't become ours until we experienced that which brought it to us.
Yes. So
Got it.
here's what his argument is. If all knowledge begun with the senses, we could not have sensible experience. That's premise one. Because basically, if all knowledge began with the senses could do whatever they want, and we couldn't have sensible experience. Does that make sense?
No. Try again.
Okay. If there was not innate, if there was not an innate structure of the mind, our senses could give us chaos. Basically,
And they do
they
with
could.
plenty of people.
Yeah. So he says for people who have what he calls sensible experience, what the mind does is it organizes things into what he calls the forms of intuition and the categories of the understanding. So the forms of intuition are space and time, and the categories of there's 12 categories of the understanding, which for the life of me I can't remember right now. But what's most important is the forms of intuition are the spatiotemporal organizing of experience, and the categories are the categories that give us sensible experience. And this would include things like causality, plurality, unity, but it doesn't really matter. But just there are 12 categories of the understanding which synthesize with the forms of intuition to give us sensible experience. And this is difficult, so I understand. I
No, 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 no,
understand.
no. It's well, so it's not so much that it's difficult. I want you to understand. It's more a matter that it feels like we're trying to find complicated sentence structures to describe something that seems self-evident. That's the reason that I'm struggling, is because I feel like there's a better way to, like, it doesn't feel like these are things that needed to be. It just, it seems unnecessarily overly complicated. That's, I guess that's the frustration. But okay. So can you do me a favor and just look up the flavors of intuition and the nuances of understanding, or whatever the terminologies of it is, again,
So
please?
I already know the forms of intuition. That's
Okay,
space and time. Space and time are in the mind.
but they're
The
both
12 categories.
but they're both measurable fucking features of the reality around us. But okay, go on.
The 12 categories of the understanding are unity,
Hold on. Unity.
plurality,
Spell that word. Is that morality or burality?
plurality,
Plurality. Got it. Okay.
totality, reality,
This dude just found words that rhymed. Keep going.
negation,
Yay! Must be the end of the stanza.
limitation,
Yep, I was right. We're into the new rhyming words.
inher- inherence and subsistence, causality and dependence, and community. And the last three are possibility and impossibility.
Or is that 2 or 1?
That's one. Existence and non-existence. And necessity and contingency. Again, one. He believed that in the Critique of Pure Reason that he deduced these 12 categories as requirements for all sensible experience because you could not conceive of a sensible experience without these categories in the mind. So, for example, I could not conceive of an experience that would be sensible in the sense of something which I could repeat in memory, with that doesn't have cause and effect relationships or does not have relationships of you know, unity, like seeing an object as one, or plurality, seeing how it relates to other objects. Basically, I could not conceive of sensible experience without these 12 categories.
Without all of them or without at least one of them?
Without all of them.
Okay.
All 12 are necessary for a sensible experience to occur.
Okay.
Okay. Then we have modern philosophy, which is after Kant. We have two major schools of thought: analytic philosophy and continental philosophy.
Okay.
Okay. Analytic philosophy is founded by, there's multiple founders. I can't give you the list of, I can't go all the way to all the modern philosophers, but I'll just list the big ones if that's okay.
Sure.
Okay. So analytic philosophy begins with a fellow by the name of Gottlob Frege.
Before we do that, please definitions for analytic versus continental.
Analytic philosophy is a style of philosophy prominent within English and British philosophy departments, which focuses on logical clarity and analysis of things.
You said logical clarity.
Yes.
And analysis. And analysis. And then continental is?
It's basically philosophy related to the human experience predominantly.
Got it. So one of them is testable, repeatable, and provable. The other one is based on experience and is subjective. Got it.
In a sense. It's complicated because there's different traditions, but these are general themes within these two schools of thought.
Hold on, Energy. This is where it's getting complicated? Come on now. Anyway, go on.
The founder of analytic philosophy is a fellow by the name of Gottlob Frege. That's Gottlob Frege.
That's not a real word, but okay, let's go.
He started to logically analyze language and mathematics.
Analyzed what in mathematics?
Language and mathematics.
Language. Okay.
He developed do you want me to give all of the modern philosophers' views? Is it okay if I just sort of
This is entirely up to you, my friend. So, how you want to? So far, we are good. You said, can we take a couple of minutes to go through some history an hour ago? So, how much you want to spend on this is up to you. How much you want to get into any one of these? Almost every single one of these things that you have talked about tonight are things that I could do a deep dive into and discuss with you, probably at length, trying to peel apart the onion. Furthermore, I know that there are several people in the chat who are fucking literally chomping at the bit to jump in here with us, because they feel like there are things that are getting missed, or that there's nuance, like they want us to circle back to a lot of this. So how you want to play this is up to you. You can just give me the framework here, and then I can do my own research and look into these and yell into the darkness later on tonight or tomorrow. Or we can circle back at any point and go through some of the. It's your call, Energy. What you want to do.
Here's what I think. Here's what I think I'll do. So I'll just list the idea that I'll just list the name of the idea that they're associated with, and then we'll circle back on what the specifics of what that means is. So he was
Sure.
the founder of a group.
This is Gottlob. This is Gottlob.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Gottlob.
Is
Gottlob.
linguistic
analysis.
Analysis. Why is that fucking word difficult for me tonight? All right.
Okay, and then you have continental philosophy is founded by a fellow named Georg Hegel.
I'm just gonna write Hegel. And you said that's the continental. Philosophy. Got it.
He is the founder of, well, he's not the founder, but he is the first major proponent of a tradition known as German idealism.
Okay. And how does that person relate to Nietzsche?
So Nietzsche
before or after?
Was the guy who came after. Nietzsche's after Hegel.
Okay.
So is there I just wanted to list the founding fathers basically of the traditions. If you want, we can start talking about the concepts, or I can go into further people who developed it in modern times. But if there's any concepts in particular you'd like to talk about,
I repeat, my friend, this is up to you. I have got a shit ton of notes here already, so we can go all the way back to Thales and the pre-Socrates. Didn't need the gods to say what was true. Thalians, is that correct? A Thalian.
I think.
All right, yeah. So I would not hate going through and kind of pulling apart Socrates, Plato versus Aristotle. I've read a little bit about them. I don't talk about what I have read because the fact is I purged most of that from my memory already. But I do know that in general, I tend towards the Socratian method, like I said earlier. But again, there's a lot of stuff to fuck it. Literally, we could spend the rest of this night talking about any one of these, I think. Yeah, Thalians, right? Yeah, that's the people who like, isn't that L. Ron Hubbard? Or am I wrong? Okay.
It should be noted, by the way, I'm more than willing to have, like, unless you have an objection to this, if Ancom or whatever wants to jump in and talk about this, that's also fine.
Are you sure?
Well, yeah, I'd be fine with it. You can. I mean, if whatever you want, but I'm saying I would be fine with that.
Well, I appreciate that. To be clear, Energy, as I started with the beginning of this, you have been very patiently waiting for me to engage in this sort of content with you. And so if you want to bring more people to the party, Ancom, if you are still out there, and you are interested in coming in here, hopping up and clarifying some things, telling us the things that you think got missed in this brief history of philosophy, this invite would also, I'd be willing to go to Maida. Both of y'all seem to have plenty of shit to say. I know that we have a few other people out there. So, well, and that's what I was about to say. I mean, we have a bunch of people out there. If we want to turn this into a full panel about philosophy, then once again, like I said, this is ultimately up to you.
Well, the reason I wanted specifically Ancom to join us because they were implying I was just reading the Wikipedia page, and I was just want to be clear that I have listened to lectures about Spinoza and Descartes, but I have not read them. But I have read Leibniz.
I just thought it was funny that you named Descartes, Spinoza, and Leibniz in order when if you look at the ontological argument Wikipedia page, those three appear in that order directly after Anselm, who was the original developer of that theory, and I just realized I didn't mute the stream, so I'm hearing myself talk back, and that always interrupts my train of thought.
Can relate.
Yeah. So I'm actually going to step out and suggest you bring Maida into this, or if you're cool with me staying, I will be quiet as Maida and Energy go back and forth, but I think his was a more coherent objection to the arguments presented than mine is. And so, also, I wasn't taking notes, so I don't remember everything that was said.
Real quick, and real quick before you continue, I want to be clear. Energy was very, very clear at the very beginning of this that they were not presenting their positions or their beliefs. They were simply laying out the most common and or mainstream philosophers and their theories or philosophies, their schools of thought, their ideologies, ontologies, whatever the right term is when it comes to philosophy. Yeah. Energy was not making a case for any of these. I did some light pushing back because of the shit that didn't make sense to me, and unfortunately I have troubles not engaging with shit that makes no sense to me. But to be fair, I just want to be clear that Energy was not making any arguments. So Energy was simply
I was listening to a good portion of this before I jumped in and started talking with Maida and some others in a different channel. The problem I have with that claim that Energy, that you weren't arguing for anything, is I heard you present philosophers in a particular order and describe your theories in a particular way.
There may have been bias.
Not just bias, and I'm not necessarily indicating that there was intent here, but there was a significant amount of cherry picking in that you described those philosophies in such a way as to have described only the parts that seemed to back up what I imagine your argument for God would be, and you tended to focus very heavily specifically on arguments for the existence of God and almost nothing else about their philosophies.
Okay, so that's a fair criticism. Energy. How do you agree that your primary interest in philosophy is the seeking of God?
No, so I was also trying to present things like questions like, does the world depend on perception or not, which is why I mentioned Berkeley, or the morality, right? Locke saying that there is objective morality and property rights, and Hume saying not, or whether or not you could use faith, which is Augustine, versus reason, which is Aquinas. I mentioned these philosophies and their epistemic thing. I just had an emphasis on God because that was highly debated during the scholastic period. So I would not say I overly argued for God.
Various arguments for God go back long before the scholastic period. Like, even the Greeks were arguing about the nature of divinity and whether divinity existed at all in many cases. So I think, like I said, I think there was a lot left out in this, and I'll grant that it was a short, run through. I'm certainly not the person to come up with a lesson plan for how I'm gonna go through, 3,000 plus years of philosophical history. I just know that, when I'm thinking back and I'm looking through the notes that Horseradish was writing, I'm seeing a very specific focus on a particular philosophical topic. And I think you left out a lot of information in the realm of philosophy that didn't seem to point at this, in this general direction that, your seminar here seemed to be pointing.
All right. Well, so let's respond to that. What do you think got missed, Ancom? Like, what were some standout philosophies or philosophers that you feel like got left out?
So, I mean, in addition to the Eastern philosophers, of which there are far too many to even go into right now.
Sure.
And I'll grant, people
starting from Greece.
People in the West tend to focus on Western philosophy, starting with, Thales is not one I hear brought up very often. Usually people start with the big three: Aristotle, Socrates, Plato. Or I got that in the wrong order, but doesn't matter. So looking at this, yeah, Socrates questioned everything. That's a massive oversimplification, but
it's what I'm doing for a one-line note.
Yeah. Socrates' whole thing was that, you know, the best way to truth is through dialogue and interrogation of ideas.
Which was actually the way Energy said it. I just summarized, but go on, yeah.
Yeah. So but it was specifically about interrogating ideas and looking for the logical inconsistencies and contradictions in those arguments.
Literally how I live my life. Love it. Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, Plato, I mean, he wrote a fucking shit ton. He was the main guy who wrote all of this shit down, including Plato and Aristotle. He had a lot of stuff. The cave is the thing I always think about when I think of Plato, but I'm pretty sure Hammer went over Plato's cave with
Indeed.
a couple weeks ago.
Yep.
Yeah. So I'm not going to cover that right now. Then we go to Augustine, Plotinus, Aquinas, etc.
And obviously we skipped a few hundred years there. I'm sure that there was probably a philosopher or two between Socrates and Augustine, yeah? So
many. You've probably heard of, oh god, I'm forgetting his name, and I can think of two big items that are associated with him, but I can't think of his name. He's the guy who came up with the idea of buoyancy, and he's famous for using the word eureka. Why the fuck can't I think of his name? Anybody?
I remember the story of Eureka, but I don't remember who it was either. So
yeah, he sat in a bathtub, noticed how his body displaced water, figured out the law of buoyancy, and went Eureka. Anyways, he was also a philosopher. Granted, I came into this completely unprepared, so forgive me for not having all of these ideas off the top of my head.
Archimedes. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. That's who I was trying to think of.
You know, I'm pretty sure that he's the guy who
you had. Like Pythagoras was huge on philosophy. Most people think of him for the triangle and for music. What was that?
Oh, I was just holding up my my thermometer. That if I'm not mistaken is from Archimedes.
Where you have different, because water's density changes with heat, and so if you
literally have it on my desk with me.
Of known densities, they will rise and fall.
Yep.
All right. So. Yeah, so we have Augustine. Honestly, didn't. By the way, medieval is spelled Medeval.
Yeah, I know medieval, but this was more funny to me. Yeah. So
fair enough. Although I mean, technically, it does mean middle evil.
Mm-hmm. I know.
That's ages, but.
Go on.
Sorry.
It's okay. When I see the word medieval spelled properly, it makes me think of Dungeons and Dragons, and I giggle. So, anyway, go on.
Fair. All right. So, Augustine, I'm having trouble remembering the main contributions of Augustine right now. So, forgive me. I'm going to Wikipedia this because I am unprepared as shit.
Go ahead. I'm not afraid of Wikipedia. Even when Energy was like, forgive me, I gotta look this up. It's like, dude, I don't care. Fucking look it up. I want to hear this. I want to learn. Because again, I'm going to keep repeating this so everybody understands why I'm doing this. And there were several things here that even that Energy has already gone through tonight that I'm like, oh yeah, I've heard that. Again, I try not to call people out by name, but y'all mentioned the person in chat, so I will say, yes, I have heard the argument from Teriyaki about how like God exists because atoms. And so like now I understand sort of where he got that sort of theory from, and and I understand at least where that concept was birthed. So
yeah. So Augustine's main contributions were he believed that astrology was an exact, genuine science. Not really, no one really cares about that particular philosophy these days. Epistemology,
I agree.
Basically believed that the only way we can know things is through divine revelation, effectively, so that
you only know it because God tells you.
Exactly. Then you have his his just war theory. He believed Christians should be pacifists, but he did believe that certain certain wars could be justified, such as those that are stopping or those that are stopping sin. So not a pacifist at all.
No.
It's so yeah, so dumb. And then finally, his idea that humans have free will. God created humans as rational beings possessing free will, not intended for sin, but it's equally predisposed to good and evil. So basically, he was one of the earliest, I believe, that proposed the idea of free will as a concept. It hadn't really been
It wasn't in the Bible?
formalized. No.
Hold the fucking up. Hold the fuck up.
You have to read in, like, you have to negotiate that into the text. Specifically, a lot of people do this when in the passage talking about where God says, we will make them in our image, in our likeness. A lot of people interpret that
as implying free will.
As implying free will, because if God has free will, then that is the image and likeness he gave to humanity.
It never actually occurred to me until you just said this, but I'm trying to go back through my mind. And yeah, I don't think I've ever read in the Bible. Like, this is one of those things I've just always kind of taken for granted when people say, oh, well, God gave us free will, so that's why we blah, 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 blah. Like, that is a default excuse dismissal for
it's
most.
Also worth noting, it's also worth noting that the Bible in multiple occasions directly contradicts the idea of free will, because it will say that either God or Satan, or in at least one case both, depending which section you're reading from, will harden people's hearts and drive them to sin on purpose.
Yes. Not only that, but I literally got kicked out of a Sunday school because I was trying to parse through the idea that, wait a minute, it's free will, but it's predetermined. How do those two things work? that seems mutually exclusive. And my Sunday school teacher didn't like that. So anyway, got it.
And then of course you have the whole, free will versus omniscience problem. Although omniscience is like that word, there's no word like omniscience in the Bible. There's lots of descriptions about the many things God can see and the many things God knows, but a lot of that is very poetic language, and you don't know how much of it is meant to be literal and how much of it is meant to be poetry.
Truth.
So yeah, it's a lot of shit there. All right, so next up on the list, Plotinus. I actually am not super familiar with Plotinus. I've heard of him before, but
So, according to Energy, this is the person who believes that there was not a world of forms, just one ground of being.
Yeah. Okay. So
he unified the Augustinian idea as with
more like the Platonian idea.
Okay.
Augustine unified the Plotinus.
That's right. I got that backwards. Okay, got it.
Yeah. So yeah, Plotinus, and he was kind of in between. He was around. So like, the old philosophers were, I believe, 600 to 800 BCE, roughly in that range. Plotinus was more. He was around 204 CE, so he was a few hundred years after. So this would have been around the time where Christianity was just starting to pick up within the Roman Empire. But as far as I know, he was not himself a Christian at the time.
Okay.
Although plenty of his works have influenced that, because he talks predominantly about the idea of the one, the supreme, the transcendent. So anytime you hear arguments based on, and Teriax was a big one of these, hear stuff about the supreme, the divine, the unchanging, yada yada yada. A lot of that is sourced in one way or another from Plotinus.
Okay.
Or possibly Plotinus. I don't know how to. It's the fucking
sure.
Greek word.
Sure.
Name. I know.
It's all Greek to me.
Yeah. Anyways, quite literally in a lot of this. Yeah. So you've got that. Basically, he said, okay, this world of forms that Plato talks about, it's really just an expression of the divine. In a lot of ways, he was the first deist, right? He was the one saying, the divine is everything. Everything is divine. Everything you see is just an expression of the divine, and that to be happy, for a human to be happy, he must seek to become one with the divine.
Sounds like a very,
So,
very, very religiocentric.
yes, yeah.
You can't be happy without the church, bro. Got it.
Yeah, he was not Christian, but he was very influential on it, and yeah. All right, so then we get into Aquinas. So his big things were various arguments for God, the five ways or five proofs.
I thought it was 4 causes.
No, it's 5. 5 logical arguments for the existence of God, although if you go through each of them, you realize how much each of these is
redundant,
like, very similar to one another. Yeah. He basically wrote the same idea down 5 ways with slight variations and differences, all of which he claimed to be pointing to the existence of a God.
All right, give them to me.
All right. So we have the first mover argument, the uncaused cause. You've heard that before, I'm sure.
Nope. Try me.
Oh, okay. So basically, everything has a cause. If you go back far enough, he didn't believe that infinite retrocausality could exist.
Okay, I'm sorry. This is the 5 ways. Unmoved mover, something has to change it. Okay, I did catch up. Okay, sorry, I missed this. Yep.
Yeah, unmoved mover, universal causation. So everything has a cause, and everything, there are effects of that cause, and you can't have a point at which there was no cause unless you assume that God is that uncaused cause. So it's like I said, it's basically just the first mover argument in a slightly different form. Then you have contingency, which is
so this I was also going to say I actually overlooked. I'm sorry, Radish. I forgot. This is actually an argument that Leibniz made. What Leibniz argued is that instead of there being a temporal infinite amount of events in the past, that's why we need God, is to be the first cause in a temporal sense. What he says is that all contingent beings have a cause external to them. The universe is a contingent being, therefore the universe has a cause external to itself. And
this is basically the column.
Say it again.
Seriously, I can't find daylight between Aquinas' argument from contingency and the Coulomb cosmological argument. It's
so this
the same.
Is not the Coulomb. This is Leibniz.
Really is. I
know this is different, and I'm going to tell you. You're
describing Aquinas.
I'm describing Leibniz. Aquinas is temporal causation. This is not temporal. This is the idea that the universe is a contingent being. All contingent beings have a cause. Therefore, the universe has a cause.
The universe is a being?
A contingent being.
What do you mean by the word contingent in this context?
It could have been otherwise.
Yeah, contingent literally just means it's
based on something else.
Some fact about it requires something else outside of it to have been done. Yeah.
Like I said, the idea of referring to it as a being indicates that it is an entity of itself, as opposed to the conglomeration of entities, which is what the universe is.
If you think of the idea of set theory, the universe is just the set of all things.
Yes.
But as a set in and of itself, it is a being. A being and a set are, for the purposes
definitionally the same, I guess. Yeah. Okay. No, I see it. I got it.
Interchangeable terms. It is things that be, right?
Yes. Your first explanation of a conglomeration of things becomes a thing in and of itself. I got it. Okay, caught up.
Yeah. So
Universe is a contingent being.
Yeah, Kalam just proposes a slightly more temporal. So the Kalam cosmological argument, if you're not familiar, is everything that begins to exist must have a cause. The universe began to exist, therefore the universe has a cause. And then you take it a little further and say that causes God.
Just as a side note, quick curiosity, because my internal argument, my inclination to argue against this is that all that is has always been and always will be. Now, is there a name for that? Which philosopher said that?
Off the top of my head, I do not know.
Aristotle believed the universe is eternal.
Who?
Aristotle.
Okay. All right. That it's eternal, has always been, always will be, that it is in a constant state of flux and expansion and recession, and that's kind of my personal belief.
I would argue the idea of it.
Hang on, Energy. Let Energy go.
I just want to say, Leibniz's argument here is that the universe could have been differently, and because the universe could have been differently, it must have a necessary grounding of its existence, which is God. Because the universe could have not existed.
That still doesn't make sense.
Horseradish.
But okay, go on.
I was going to say, Horseradish, I want you to point out to me where you believe the flaw in that argument is.
Okay, sure. Say it again. Energy. And I will.
The universe could have not existed.
Okay.
Therefore, it must have a necessary cause.
So there are plenty of examples where things happen as a coincidence or as a natural confluence of events that do not necessarily denote plan, intention, etc. The idea that everything it gets into determinism, right? And it gets into the idea that everything happens for a reason. And I think that we could probably all sit here and name plenty of examples of things that just happen, not for any reason, not for any predetermined cause or any predetermined destination. They are simply a facet of existence, and it is something that we have to accept. So to try to apply intelligent thought to all random events is a human trait that we use. I don't remember, we just talked about this word the other night, but it is a human trait to explain away the things that go bump in the night.
To seek explanations for that which we do not currently know.
That
the
stuff.
Explanations too.
Yes. So again, that would be my.
And if we do not have a way to determine whether or not those explanations are,
we'll make one up.
Then we tend to use the one that feels the best.
Yep. And we often tend to deify.
Yeah, appeals to the pathos, and once we have found that explanation which feels the best, we tend to idolize it and deify it, and this is where you get...
We do tend to worship the things we fear the most.
Yep.
That's why so many old civilizations had death gods and such. Anyway, I'm sorry, go on.
Yeah, Leibniz's actual statement was kind of the immortal, why is there something rather than nothing? And he says, the sufficient reason is found in a substance which is a necessary being bearing the reason for its existence within itself. It is just another version of the uncaused cause or the first mover. It is saying it is only contingent upon itself, which means it is non-contingent. It is assuming the existence of a non-contingent being to explain all things that are perceived to be contingent, but it assumes that there is not some other, or there is not an infinite series of
random events.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
the
sorry.
argument is the universe is contingent. There can't be an infinite amount of contingent justification. Therefore, there must be a final hierarchical in the hierarchy of the causal ladder, a final stop, which is the justification for the contingent universe is the necessary being that is God.
And I would still contend that there absolutely can be an infinite series of contingencies.
Okay, and that's fine. I'm not.
Yeah.
So
No,
my own view
I
is
know this is not your argument, but like I said, and remember that's why I said I was only going to say it once, but since it's relevant a second time, if I'm pushing back against an idea that is being proposed to me and somebody says, well, it's not my idea. Well, it's like, yeah, okay. Yeah, you're right. I wish Le Dentist was here so I could tell him why he's fucking stupid. So, and
Yeah.
that's why philosophy frustrates me.
Yeah, but I mean, I still think there's value in studying history, but I will
I
just say my
understand,
own
and I'm
view
here for it.
is a Kantian view, which is causality is in the mind, it's not external in reality, so we can't necessarily know if causality applies to the external world such that there's a first cause of God, because causality is just what our mind contributes to give us sensible experience.
Or
I also
is it necessary for us to assume that all things have a causal relation, or is it possible that some things happen despite a lack of causality?
Well, there's
No,
also
all things on sensible experience have a causal relationship, but that's just an
According to one of
simple
these guys you quoted.
Yes, but that's I think
what I've been
that's
trying to bring
true.
up. So in addition to infinite linear causality, there's also the idea of cyclical causality,
which is my actual
You
belief.
you have things that are occurring in an infinite loop of
Yes.
causality.
Yes.
The overall size of that loop being largely unknowable.
Sure.
But like the reason I can use this to what's the word I'm looking for? To reconcile energy's problem with the infinite causality argument is if you look at a circle, yeah, it has no starting or ending point, but there are points on the circle.
That you could call that one your starting point, and you're gonna yes, exactly.
Yeah, every point has a preceding point, every point has a following point, and you just keep going around and around in that circle forever. And
I literally said earlier, I believe the snake is eating its tail. Yes.
Yeah, you have an infinite causality, but it's ultimately every cause is, if you go back far enough in the causality chain, its own cause. There's your uncaused cause right there. Yes. Everything is its own uncaused cause.
Like, and it circles back into infinity. Yes.
Exactly. Like every argument I know of that can be made for God can also be made for something that is not God, but still fits within a naturalistic explanation of the universe.
And God is the default explanation for that which we don't understand. Always has been, always will be. Yes. Yep. I don't know which philosopher said that first, but it seems self-evident to me. So that's the school of philosophy I would attribute myself to. All right, so the scientific revolution, because this is actually important to me.
Oh, sorry. I wanted to go through the last the last two of the 5 ways because
okay. Yep.
On it. I'm just gonna
I only got 4 of them anyway, so
so far we've only done 3.
No, I've only got 4 written down is what I'm saying.
Oh, okay. So now we have the argument from degree, otherwise known as the henological argument. Henology is the philosophical account or discourse on the one, going back to Plotinus, or Plotinus rather. Basically, it's just the idea that the universe is everything is God, therefore the universe is God, something along.
Yep. That was
it was
the
manipulated
naturalist
by Aquinas into a more Christian specific ideology, but that's effectively the argument. And then we have the teleological argument, which is basically the idea that the universe has a goal or an endpoint to which it is going. If that is true, then something had to define that endpoint, then therefore God.
And it is entirely based on the events that have occurred on Earth, because for some strange reason, this unimportant and generally unrecognizable planet in the middle of a generally a mundane galaxy out in the fucking weird corner of the universe is where the omnipotent, omniscient being decided everything is important and it matters. So when Jesus comes back on this planet, that's when all of the universe ceases to exist for some strange reason. Got it.
Basically. I did overlook a particular element of this one, which is the idea of intelligence. Intelligence leads to, like, intelligence creates purpose, essentially.
Okay.
And so then you ask what created intelligence, had to have defined that purpose, and that is God.
But it's
So,
also
minor oversight on my part.
but if there's and I would say that there is evidence that supports that intelligence can develop over time from nothing, then it means that God is nothing.
You're not wrong. There's a reason few, if any, use Aquinas's like formulations of these arguments. They're not good, especially with many of the advances in technology and science that we have seen over the past few hundred years. He was writing this 1700 years ago, somewhere around there. When the fuck did he live?
And for what it's worth, that is why I have so many problems with most of these theories or these thinkers, is because, like, again, we were talking about what were they called? The Mumdanis or whatever, that were just a description for particles. And
Monads.
It's like, yeah, that, sure.
Yeah, I was reading through the idea of a monad because I had forgotten what it meant, and basically it's just the concept of an elementary particle. And like now we have that with the standard model of physicals.
We literally understand it. Yeah.
Standard model of particle physics. We have leptons, we have quarks, and we have bosons.
And it's impressive that this dude who probably thought that blown glass was really fucking cool, like that with that level of technology, he was able to.
Actually, no, the idea of having, like, this goes back before him, because the idea of having a fundamental elementary particle goes back to the Greeks. It's literally where we get the idea of the four elements: water, wind, fire, air. It's where we get the word atom from, because atom was originally meant to mean undivisible or indivisible. Now we know that split it's not. It has there are subatomic and subatomic particles, but now, at least since the 50s, we believe that we've gotten down to the bottom rung of reality in terms of elementary particles, and we also have the idea of the Planck scale, which that's physics shit that I'm not going to get into.
Is it Planck? I thought it was Planck.
It is Planck.
No, it's Planck.
It doesn't matter. It's a German fucking name. It could be Planck. It could be Planck. It could be Plunk, for all I know. I'm pretty sure the German pronunciation is Planck, but I really don't give a fuck what you call it.
Well, the Planck length, just to clarify, that is the Planck length is indivisible.
As far as we know, it's just the point at which physics breaks down in our equations.
Which we do know does happen.
It is so like the Planck length is so much smaller than the width of a proton. We have never and possibly will never be able to directly observe anything at that scale. It is simply the length at which the Planck constant determines that nothing like. Basically, all of the quantum fields, all of the equations we use to define quantum fields break down at sizes below this scale.
So real quick,
it's considered indivisible in
currently, yes, based on our current understanding.
It is hypothesized as being indivisible,
and that's
based on our current understanding of physics.
And that's what I was going to say. This is the other thing. Philosophy, in my mind, largely has been disproven by science, or many aspects of it are disproven by science. But science is also commonly disproven by science. The reason a lot of people get real, especially like science sycophants, get really angry whenever I say that I personally don't believe in the Big Bang Theory. I believe in a series of infinite bangs, because our idea and understanding of the Big Bang is based on a very tiny fucking perception of the universe. That's why we call it the known universe. We think we know what it looks like, but it seems like the observable universe, and that word keeps changing. Like how far, every time we think that we know how big it is, we then are able, a new technology comes along and it expands the observable space. And every time that happens,
so that's a little bit of a misconception. The observable universe is that sphere around the Earth, which we estimate based on based on a huge number of observations and how we believe physics to work.
Yep.
Says that light from these points can reach us. Anything beyond that, light cannot reach us.
Based on our current understanding.
Based on the bounds of that is where we see the cosmic microwave background, which is the oldest light we can possibly see
so far,
based on our current understanding.
Yep.
But the idea of the observable universe, sure, the definition of how big it is, how many, billions of light years away it might be, and the reason it's more than 14 billion is because space is expanding. I really should do a physics lesson.
And I really do not believe that there is any way for us to conceive of the actual size and scope of the universe. So, real quick, what is the toroidal universe?
The observable universe, but whether or not there's anything that exists beyond that is an unanswered question.
Yes. The toroidal universe, is that the idea that it keeps like a series of bangs and
oh no, you're thinking of a cyclical universe.
Cyclical, which is
a toroidal is the shape of a donut or a bagel, just to get that out of the way. But yes, a cyclical universe is so it's one of the cosmological hypotheses. It is the idea
that is actually something that people think. Okay, good.
Yes, the Big Bang was in fact the result of a prior big crunch, right? So there's this idea. Right now, we don't think that this is actually what happened, at least, we don't believe that this is what our universe is going to do based on our current observations, because it seems more likely at this point it's going to go to heat death of the universe, or possibly a big rip scenario. I can get into that later.
I've heard of both.
The idea being that eventually, over time, gravity wins out over the expansion of the universe. Everything gets pulled back in until you are down to a singularity, at which the next Big Bang starts. And
so what if let me
units of time before we'll go back to big crunch.
That's not the one I'm talking about. Okay. And again, I'm not necessarily sure that there's anybody else who believes this, although I can't imagine that I have some super brain that I came up with this, like I'm the only person who ever thought of this. But it's more of like a series of explosions that happen and expansions and retractions, that take place across an infinite space, that we are in one space that is expanding in the direction that ours is, but that there is another space somewhere else that is expanding in a different direction, and that these spaces, when they rub up against each other or they bang into it, that basically there's a series of bangs that happen in infinite space. And we just happen to be looking from inside of one of those expansions. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that I don't know of a specific theory that talks about it exactly like that.
But you get what I'm at least saying.
Made me think of a few different ideas in cosmology.
Okay. This is something I came up with when I was high, when I was like 17. So
one of them being a sort of a bubble universe, basically saying our universe is a bubble on a higher dimensional, like 4 or 5 spatial dimensional super universe, and that there are other bubbles that are attached to us through these higher dimensions that we as 3-dimensional beings, 4-dimensional if you count time, do not have access to. So that's one way.
Yes.
There
Yeah, and
is
then there's another thing I was going to say.
cyclical what does it call it? The conformal cyclical cosmology. Basically, it's saying that when you look deep enough into space, you can conformalize, which is to say, take a bigger scale and map it onto a smaller scale. So as space continues to expand, eventually it gets to a point where, oh hey, that scale maps perfectly onto this much smaller scale, and suddenly you have a new universe, and that just keeps going cyclically forever.
Yep.
There's
Yes.
a lot
And
of
then there's another thing I was going to say, just
types of
one more
cosmology.
thing.
Shoot.
There's a theory in cosmology which is proposed by theoretical physicist Lawrence Krauss, which is that before, quote unquote, before space-time and the universe as we know it, there was a quantum vacuum where particles and antiparticles popped in and out of existence, and space-time emerged from this quantum vacuum where there wasn't space-time.
And in that theory, why would we think that would only happen once?
To my understanding, he doesn't believe it only happens
Good.
once.
Then I like this. That's basically what I think.
So,
beautiful. See, that feels
anyways,
good.
there's lots of different ways to say that we think the universe could exist in a cyclical model that does not require a godlike being. It could be a completely unthinking process. This is also why I feel arguments like the fine-tuning argument fail via the anthropic principle, which basically says only universes which have the conditions to create beings that could observe the universe will end up having observers that observe the universe. We exist in
Say
a
it
universe
again.
that supports our life. Okay, so the idea, so the fine-tuning argument, right? It says we find ourselves in a universe where all of these different physical constants seem to be tuned very, very perfectly, such that we humans could exist.
No. There are plenty of things that could exist outside of us. We are only able to perceive our limited amount of the universe.
No. Yes, but that's the point. The point is that we find ourselves in a universe that seems to have laws that seem to be perfectly tuned for us to exist.
But they're not.
Opposite argument.
They're not at all.
Well,
the laws of this world actually work against us. We are a statistical anomaly. Like at the end of the day, we would see fucking life everywhere on every planet in every inch of space. We are a very tiny example of where we are able to exist, and more importantly, what we are able to perceive is limited. That's like saying, okay, I'm only able to see in the direction I'm facing, so obviously the direction I'm facing was made for me. That's dumb.
Yes, that's actually exactly the point I'm making. What you just described was the layman's version of the anthropic principle. So the fine-tuning argument says we have all these physical constants: the strength of gravity, the strength of the strong and weak nuclear forces, strength of
not sure either of those is constant, but keep going. Yeah.
As far as we know, they appear to be, but
gravity has changed. Yeah, gravity changes. We know for sure. But gravity can be manipulated.
The strength of the universal gravitational constant, big G, has never changed so far as so long as we have been observing it. Not once.
Anyways, okay, we'll circle back to that. Go on.
Yeah. The point is, the argument is that there are all these physical constants that if they were slightly larger or slightly smaller, the conditions necessary for human life specifically, but life in general in the universe, could not exist, right? So I am arguing, or rather the anthropic principle is arguing, that in order for observers to observe a universe, that universe must have conditions for those observers to come into being. And so any observer looking at a universe where they already exist would expect to see conditions where they are able to exist. Just like what you said. if I'm looking in a certain direction, that's like saying that direction is the cause of me looking at it. It's a silly argument because it's like, obviously, if you're looking in that direction,
That's what
you're
you'll
looking in
see.
that direction.
Yeah.
That's what you'll see. Exactly. And that other universes could exist that didn't have
That we
the
can't
same
see.
physical concept.
Exactly. Or even
That
there are layers
even
within our
no
own
life-
existence that we just can't perceive.
Sure. Anyway,
Like, I
that's the
can't
anthropic
see time.
principle.
Right?
Yeah. That's the anthropic principle, which is a counter argument to the fine-tuning argument. And anyways, I have now run to the end of my train of shit that I was planning on talking about, or at least I have forgotten any other points I was going to make. So
I did want to get to modern. I did kind of want to get to modern philosophy, if that's okay.
Well,
So-
yes,
That
but
was the other
hold on, because there was actually a specific part of this that I wanted to hear, and Ancom's presence is going to kind of benefit it, is the unification of science and philosophy, right? So Galileo, the idea, and I know Da Vinci, I know there were several scientists who were also into the more existential philosophy of it, and I'm curious where philosophy and science meet, which one wins?
right. So, before we called it science, we called it natural philosophy, aka the philosophy of the natural world. Newton didn't have the word science, at least not in the sense that we use it today. He was a natural philosopher.
Okay.
The same is true of figures like Descartes, Leibniz. There's another one whose brain, or my brain is not Pascal. Lots of these different people that we consider scientists, but were very into other forms of philosophy, the non-natural, metaphysical philosophy. And so when we eventually, and I don't know exactly where this transition happens, I think it's one of those, it's a gradient over time. But roundabout the mid to late 19th century is when we start to see this change, or this separation of the moral and metaphysical philosophy with the natural sciences. And so the thing is, modern science evolved out of philosophy, and there is in fact a philosophy of science that underpins the entire scientific process.
Okay, where does theology fit into that history? Like, because it's not lost on me that most science comes from philosophy or philosophers, and most philosophers come from theologians. That the Vatican was known for, the Catholic Church was known for being at the forefront of scientific study. I've heard arguments as to the motivation for that, but like even beyond that, how much were people like Socrates and Plato and Aristotle motivated by their search for evidence of their gods? Because I guess Greece was pantheistic, right? So how much of their philosophy and or therefore the science was born from the pursuit of proving or disproving God?
So if we go back to the Greek philosophers, we know they believed in the gods, but at least in the case of Aristotle, he had a reputation in Athens of being the naysayer, not because he was saying that the gods didn't exist, but because
he just didn't accept it.
Well, no, he was saying he did not believe the gods had the attributes that were being ascribed to them, and he saw contradictions in the mythologies that were told about things like how the world came to be, how existence is. He was critically analyzing the contemporary mythology and being like, these things don't make sense, and here's why. And he ended up being exiled from Athens because of this. Or actually, was it exiled or executed? I can't remember. I think it might have been both. Anyways. So if we take theology as beginning from questions about the nature of the world around us, and that is a decently accurate description of philosophy, then in reality, the two are
basically the same,
inseparably intertwined,
Yeah.
and they have split off in different ways by choosing where and why to accept certain explanations that that have been proposed along this search for truth. And then we eventually build up enough information and understanding and the ability to persist knowledge over longer and longer periods of time, and to do so reliably, that we eventually get to natural philosophy and then science. Because now we start getting to this point where we can more and more easily look at the findings and the thoughts of people that came before us and do new investigations based on that information and maybe find different things. And then we write those down and talk about them with other people in similar pursuits around us. And then a conversation, a grand conversation starts to be built, and we start to realize maybe there is a better way for us to ask these questions and to make these observations and propose explanations for them that we can then test and validate or falsify, and boom, we get the beginnings of science out of philosophy. So ultimately, they all stem from the same source, which is the search for truth. But based on our current understanding and looking at what has happened over the last century and a half, we've realized that the method that seems to most reliably and repeatably get us to the actual truth of things as they are seems to be the scientific method. That's not to say the scientific method is the only way to get to that, but it is, so far as we can tell at this point in time, the most reliable way to do this. With a large part of that being, we have built in ways for this methodology to contradict itself based on evidence. And that is something that theology completely rejects. And philosophy is harder to do because when you get contradictory ideas in philosophy, there's seldom, if ever, a way to
disprove. Yeah.
Yeah. You can't
so
say
usually,
that.
so I'm going to push back a little bit on this. Philosophy uses what forms of argumentation that rely on logical absolutes that cannot be empirically tested. Science relies on falsifiable, testable hypotheses. Because of this, science is going to change over time, but if you have a truth in philosophy, it's harder to change under time unless you get a new counter argument to it which develops. But philosophy is arguments, science is evidence.
Yes. That's why I'm saying philosophy didn't have the same.
But it doesn't make it a more reliable. So it's not what's more reliable means the truth. It's reliable different ways to get truth.
I was very specific when I said reliable and repeatable, because that reliability
it is no more reliable. It has nothing to do with the level of reliability, right? It's more repeatable, but has nothing to do with the level of reliability.
I mean, if you can reliably give the same answer to a question over and over again, I would call that reliable.
Yes, and philosophy does give the same.
Repeatability is reliability, is it not?
So philosophy can give you an argument like the law of non-contradiction. You can't have a contradictory statement because things are what they are, and that is a logical truth, but you can't disprove it because anything that tries to disprove it would have to involve a contradiction by definition, and contradictions can't exist. So the law of non-contradiction, which is a philosophical law, cannot be disproved, but you use
Even if you
argumentation
give
for it.
examples?
So you could not have an example of a true contradiction.
You literally just contradicted that.
No, you could not have an example of a true contradiction. I did not contradict that.
Why can I not have an example of
Energy brings up the law of non-contradiction, and Horseradish is like, hold my beer.
Yeah, right. No, I need you to explain this again for me. The idea that you cannot have a contradictory, like,
it is better explained as saying
no. Real quick. I wanna address Radish.
Yep.
There can't be a true contradiction. A is A. A is not A.
The law of identity, not the law of non-contradiction. It is the
A
law
is
of non-contradiction.
No. The law of non-contradiction is a corollary of the law of identity. A is A means A is not non-A. Yes, and I know this is the case. A is A is a corollary of A is not A.
No, that doesn't. If it were, you would not need it as a separate law. Anyways, let me just explain.
They're corollaries. They are corollaries.
I don't care. It doesn't help. It does not help Horseradish at this point, and that is what I'm trying to do.
Thank you, Ancom.
I know, but you're monopolizing the conversation, and this was. No, you shut up.
How about both of you shush? And I just need to hear somebody explain to me why it is that you can't have a non answer. Like what you're repeating the word and it doesn't make sense to me. So again, I know. Hold on, Energy. You gave it a shot. Please give Ancom a shot. Explain it to me in a term that I can process, please.
A proposition cannot be both true and false in the same sense at the same time.
In the same respect.
That is what I meant by sense.
A statement cannot be simultaneously
true and false
and untrue. Okay, a statement cannot be simultaneously
in the same sense at the same time.
Hold on and just let me process this and see if I can think of an example that disproves that statement, because it does not seem factual to me, but I suppose maybe it is. Maybe it just sounds wrong. Statement cannot be simultaneously true and untrue in the same sense at the same time.
It is worth noting Heraclitus did not agree with this.
Yeah, and again, I don't agree with this either, but let me see if I can come up to the same reason as Heraclitus. So you're saying that I cannot have a thing be equally true and untrue at the same time in the same sense.
Mm-hmm.
I was just trying to explain that this is not disprovable because you could not give a counterexample, and this is a philosophical truth which is not disprovable.
Nothing is not disprovable. That's a triple negative, my friend, and it's starting to make zero sense. But
there are unfalsifiable things which cannot be proven false.
Such as?
I'm saying this is unfalsifiable. It cannot be proven false.
Give me an example of something else that cannot be proven false, please.
What the existence of God. You cannot prove that a God does not exist. It could simply be that said God does not interact with the universe after having created it, or that this God had nothing to do with the creation of the universe at all. You cannot disprove that. Or to give Bertrand Russell's example of the teapot, if I claim that there is a pristine china teapot that is inhabiting an orbit between that of Earth and that of Mars, and it is simply too small for any of our instruments to detect, you cannot disprove that this teapot exists. It is unfalsifiable.
We cannot prove it with our current technology, but it could theoretically be disproven if we had an increased level of technology that was able to detect any and all teapots throughout all of space. Like, it may not be falsifiable at this time, but given the right circumstances and advancements, it could potentially be disprovable, i.e., the disproving of God's existence. If we were able to definitively prove how humankind came to existence, it would inherently disprove creationism and therefore would undermine all of the ideas of the existence of God. Even with what you're saying, go ahead.
A key thing about unfalsifiability is that in order for something to be falsifiable, a test or experiment of some sort must be demonstrated, or must be proposed at the very least, that would say, if the outcome of this test or experiment is whatever, then the proposition that we are testing is false. Right now, all unfalsifiability claims are based on whether or not we can develop and implement an experiment of some kind to judge whether or not that proposition is false. So, it is inherently linked to our current level of technology and the ideas that we have.
We could
For something to be
create
infinitely-
we could create a near infinite amount. It's not actually infinite. There would be a finite number of ultra advanced Hubble telescopes that are literally creating a Dyson sphere around the Earth, looking in all directions simultaneously with a mind-blowing level of clarity, and be able to look in all directions simultaneously between here and Mars at the same time, hunting for the existence of said microscopic teapot. As long as we have, like, I just conceived of a scientific test that could be done to disprove the existence of silly teapot. We could also conceive of scientific tests that would equally disprove the existence of God.
I mean,
So
I
no.
could,
So
in
I'll
theory,
just let me explain it.
Yeah, let energy
I don't think-
go. Go ahead.
Okay. So and to be honest, I'm gonna be honest. I really think Ancom owes me an apology for telling me to shut up when I cordially invited him onto this.
Sure.
I did not have to let him. So I really expect an apology from Ancom. If he's not going to apologize, to be honest, I don't wanna-
Expect in one hand, shit in the other. Yeah, hope that it happens. Don't count on it. Go ahead. Please finish your statement. How is it that what I just said was not true?
So there are things that are unfalsifiable, including the existence of God, but I really want to stick on this law of non-contradiction thing. There is no evidence that you could give for a contradiction. There is no evidence that you could possibly give that statement is true and false at the same time, in the same place, in the same respect.
That you know of.
No. Ever.
Yeah, just because you haven't thought of one yet and nobody else has thought of one yet does not automatically assume it's impossible. You are assuming something is impossible because it hasn't been done yet. That does not mean that it can't be done. It simply means it hasn't been done.
it can't be done because reality is what it is and it is not what it is not.
But we don't know what reality is. We are entirely limited by our perceptions of reality, as you established earlier. So, if our perceptions of reality change, then it is absolutely feasible that we might be able to develop a way to find an example of something that is true and not true simultaneously. We are operating simply under our current limited perceptions. Just because it hasn't been done yet doesn't mean it can't be done.
Well, when you provide evidence that that's even possible, then I'm
Oh,
willing
okay.
to
So
entertain it.
yeah, sure. So you're saying that it is possible that I could find and provide evidence for this thing happening. And if that's the case, that was the
No,
same presupposition for the existence and guarantee of God, because it could happen, therefore it must.
no. First of all, I don't believe that the argument from contingency even establishes God, because I was just saying that was his argument. But the thing with non-contradiction is the reason that it can't be falsified is because like A is A. What would that mean for that to not be true?
A
Like
is only A because you labeled it as A. A stops being A as soon as I decide it's B. Huzzah. I have now refuted your statement, your presupposition of the existence or labeling of A.
I mean, you can. I guess you can.
I did.
You can play word games.
That's all we're doing here, my friend. Literally what we're doing is playing word games. And I would even say that all philosophy is a series of fucking word games.
I mean, insofar as words are how we communicate thoughts and ideas,
Exactly.
I would agree.
And we're doing circles around them, playing a square dance, looking for some sort of meaning or irrefutable truth hidden between the letters. And the fact of the matter is, I don't think that we are ever going to be able to find anything that is objectively true. Everything could potentially be disproven eventually, and it is limited only by our ability to perceive and measure and record.
I agree with that as well. I have felt for many years now that even if an objective truth or an objective existence exists, we only have access to that through the imperfect and fallible utility of our senses and our perceptions.
And I
Which we
believe
know,
Energy said there was somebody else who said that earlier, for what it's worth. Go ahead.
yeah. And like we know that our senses are imperfect. They trick us all the time. What when was
Naughty.
the last time you
Energy used the term naughty, and I like that.
Oh yeah, Descartes. In fact, that was Descartes that we were talking about. Now he was using the metaphor of like a demon fooling us, but I think we don't even need a demon.
Yeah, exactly. No,
our senses
are
fool
fallible
us all the time.
Yes,
Distinction exists.
Yes.
So if an objective reality exists, we will, I don't think, ever be able to know it with the imperfect senses that we have. The best we can do is maximal certainty, not absolute certainty. We can be as certain as we possibly can, given the fallibility of our senses about certain things, and no more than that.
And I would say it's probably human nature to try to achieve as close to infallibility as possible, right? That it is human nature to try to get as close to objective truth as we can.
I don't think that is human nature. I think that is something that we have, as a society, has decided is a good idea. But I think there are plenty of historical examples of people settling for good enough when there was more they could do to analyze a particular
so I wouldn't, I'm not trying, let me rephrase. I do not necessarily believe that it is universally true. I think that it is a nature of humanity that always shines through. That while, yes, you're going to have some measure of sheeple who are just going to accept a simple and easy answer, there's always going to be those people who are seeking for a deeper or more meaningful understanding and do not stop or accept the "'cause I said so."
I will accept that does seem to be a persistent pattern of humanity that has changed in scale over time.
Fair. What were you going to say, Energy?
I just wanted to say, to be honest, Ancom, I, I don't agree with you. You're entitled
Oh,
to your perspective, but I do think it is fucking rude to come in here and tell me to shut up when I'm trying to have a conversation with Radish.
It probably was rude, but and I'll go back and re-listen to the whole thing. I don't know who was rude first. So the fact of the matter is, it could be easily, and I could be, like I said, wrong, but it seemed like people were being equally rude. My inclination as a third party was to tell you to both shut the fuck up, because it was like y'all were trying to talk over each other, and I really want to hear from both of y'all. So again, who chicken egg? Who was rude first? I don't know. I will apologize to both of you on behalf of both of you. You are both my guests here, and ultimately I am the reason that either one of you is interacting with one another. So ultimately, causality, it is my fault that anybody was rude to anybody. People were eagerly trying to explain something to me, and I was not properly moderating the conversation. So it is my fault that anybody was getting out of hand. How about
Yeah,
that?
yeah, real quick. Yeah, real quick. Is it okay if I go into modern philosophy? Because there are some
So,
topics I think you might be interested in.
yes, well, we're going to get to modern-ish philosophy, but I'm still trying to understand the underpinnings of how we're at, right? We're like how we got
Yeah,
to where we're at, because I assume that these modern philosophies are built on the structure of the ancient philosophies, and since I am
not
still
necessarily.
no, okay, so and
Complicated. Okay, it's complicated.
I
It's
everything
very
every, everything
complicated.
everything we have been discussing tonight has been complicated energy. Nothing has been simple. So, okay, let's do a hard reset, and I'm going to ask you because we only got about 30 minutes left. Uh, I want to hear a philosophy that has come about in the last 100 years, and I would like to hear one from both of you if you both have one. A philosophy that has come back or come out in the last 100 years that is not based on anything that came before it.
Okay, so the main one I would bring up is a philosophy known as ordinary language philosophy. So this was pioneered by a fellow named Ludwig Wittgenstein, uh, who developed a theory known as ordinary language philosophy. And this, to my understanding, has no parallels in previous philosophies.
Okay.
Um, so this philosophy is based on the idea that philosophical problems stem from linguistic confusion,
Say that again.
and that philosophical problems come from the misuse of language,
Okay.
and the meaning of a word is contingent on how people use it in what he calls a language game.
Sure. Funny enough, literally what we were just talking about a second ago, wasn't it? The misuse and abuse of the English language is what leads to most misunderstandings. Yeah. If we're talking past each other, we're not actually referring to the same things, then we're incapable of having a meaningful conversation.
Yes.
However,
So here,
however, that was based on something that was said before earlier, because I said what I just said earlier in our conversation, that if we're not sharing the same language or words or meaning or definitions, then we're not going to be able to have a meaningful conversation with one another. I don't remember which philosopher that was, but earlier tonight I said that exact same concept to you.
yeah, that was him. That was him who came up with it originally. It's the idea that when I say the word dog, I'm not referring to something external in the world. It's this thing that we tend to clump together because we agree it's a dog. There's no essence inherent in the object. It's that we
Sure.
agree it's a dog.
Let's take it away from dog and let's go to God. Let's flip that word backwards, because somebody else, and I don't remember who it was, just recently, it might have even been Hammer, was talking about the fact that when we say the word God, you already have maybe it was Confluence. I don't fucking remember. Somebody was saying this, that when you say the word God, you already have a predetermined idea of what that word represents. And anytime that word comes up in a conversation with you, regardless of whether we're discussing the same idea of what that deity is, you are going to have your perception of what God is. I'm going to be having my perception of what God is. So therefore, we are not possible. It's impossible for us to be able to have a meaningful conversation about the nature of God when you are always going to hold on to what you perceive God to be. So if that's true, then that means that all theological discussions are literally a waste of fucking time. And I guess we could probably say the same thing about philosophy. Philosophy is literally a waste of time because when you talk about the Tao of dog, that is going to mean something to you that it may or may not, is probably not going to mean the same thing to me. So anytime you try to engage with me on these conversations, we're going to be talking past each other because we have our own inherent definitions of these words based on our own individual perceptions.
Yeah, so it's like when I call a dog, the only reason that we call it a dog is because we agree to call it a dog, but there's no intrinsic essence to it. And so the argument is that people like Plato who say there's a world of forms are talking nonsense because basically there is no essence to something. It's just it is what it is, and we apply different labels to it, which are social conventions.
My dog meows. So tell me more about this idea of dogs. My dog likes to pee in sand and scratches it and purrs whenever I pet my dog's ears. How are we able to have this conversation?
So if you're referring to your cat as your dog,
No. I'm referring to my dog as my dog.
Okay. If you're referring to what I would call a cat as your dog,
Probably, yes.
Then he would say that you can't do that because the reason is because basically you can't create your private language. Your understanding of language is going to be contingent on how other people use it. So in reality, what you call your dog is actually a cat because most people have agreed to call it a
Just
cat.
because most people agree on it does not mean that it's true. And that is the case of literally everything. Furthermore, people have their own languages and definitions for words all the time. Like it's kind of human nature to have your own idea or definitions of words, phrases, concepts, ideas. That is kind of part of human nature, is we form our own perception of reality. And in fact, you named a few philosophers earlier who said that reality exists simply because we perceive of it. If what I perceive of as purple is what you perceive of as red, when I refer to the light as being purple, you see it as red, we're not going to be able to have a conversation. We have our own perceptions, therefore we have our own definitions to that which we perceive. We use words to label those definitions, so all of that trickles down to your words mean nothing to me and my words mean nothing to you. All of this is an exercise in frivolity.
So I would say that that the meaning of a word is what people agree it means. And if only you agree it means something, I don't think that's language.
How many people need to agree on it?
At least two. Two.
So as long as, okay, so I can't agree with myself on the definition of a term?
Yes, because then you couldn't be wrong. Because basically, if you say, "Well, I'm going to call this a cat, a cat," and then I'm going to call this other thing a dog. There's no way to be wrong if there's no one else to negotiate what you call things or how you group things. And so the point is that other people have to engage in a language game, at least according to him. That other people have to negotiate in the language games in order for there to be a sensible language. Because if you just create a private language, you can't be wrong.
Correct. So everybody's correct. Everybody's philosophy is accurate. You cannot disprove my philosophy and I cannot disprove yours. Our conversation about philosophy is a waste of time. Okay, so Maida is about to have a stroke about objectivism. Ancom, will you please, because I know this was one of the things that you guys were discussing, Will you please explain to me what it is that Maida is trying to say about the objectivism thing?
I have not been keeping an eye on chat, so let me
Okay.
just go over his recent messages really quickly.
The difference between objectivism and relativism.
Okay. So, generally speaking, when we're talking objectivism versus relativism, we are talking most of the time about the concept of morals and ethics, whether or not there are objective standards for morals and ethics, or whether these things are relative to things like culture, society, the people that you are around. It
I
also
do
works
believe in
in language.
objective morality for what it's worth. Go on.
Interesting. But this also applies to language. There are those who would argue that language is in some sense objective. It is defined, it is laid down, and we have rules around it. Others would argue that those rules are constructs we use to make sense of, as Wittgenstein would call it, the language games, the negotiations that we have with one another when we are using language to communicate ideas. We
Yes.
are playing a game, in his wording of it, that is, when I say a word or when I say a phrase, I'm communicating a particular idea, whether or not you infer the same idea that I am implying with my language is an indication of how well the two of us are playing said game and whether or not this game is being successful. Now I would point out that he may have been the first to formalize it in this particular way, but the idea of semantics, which is essentially what this boils down
Yes, it
to,
is. Yep.
has existed since Plato, right? So
Yes.
Yeah.
the requirement of a philosophy that was, I don't remember exactly your wording, but something that had never been brought up before in the last 100 years.
Yes. Or
I'm
was
not
not
even
based
sure
on
something like,
something previous.
not based on. That's what you said. I'm not sure that exists because science and philosophy, I think, are both exercises in seeing what has come before and working on that to produce what will come after.
Correct.
And
I agree.
I don't think that ideas have been unique and not based in some way, or have not been in some way derived from earlier ideas for some time. There very likely was a point at which this was possible. In fact, almost certainly necessary as we started developing language. But I think we are at a point now where everything new that we come up with is from new observations that we could not previously make, but they are still based on something else. That's
Oh,
what
Yeah.
okay.
And so the argument that Wittgenstein, well, that the reason that his philosophy was unique was just that he thought that you could dissolve philosophical problems by saying that the meaning of words is what two people or more agree on it being, and that what the problem with philosophy is that they use words in ways that confuse the ordinary use of language, and that if you returned to ordinary language and you didn't care about the big philosophical questions, you could live a much more pragmatic life. There is another philosophy that is not really based in earlier philosophy, at least not in the same way, which is popular, known as existentialism.
Yep. I'm
So
familiar with the
existentialism
term.
is the first the first existentialist would be Kierkegaard, but the most famous existentialist in the modern times would have to be a fellow who goes by the name of Martin Heidegger. And the formulation that he gave of existentialism is that being as such or existence is not a being, but is the isness which makes all is, if that makes sense. Like the existence as such does not have an essence, but rather discloses itself through practical engagement with the world. So it's like existence as a whole is different from any individual thing.
The
Does
irony
that make
here,
sense?
the irony here is I literally made a joke the other day about the fact that when I was listening to the aforementioned Irishman try to parse through some shit on stream, I think with Circa, I made the joke that it was like sitting in a room full of high school stoners and listening to him say something stupid like, what if is wasn't? Like, that's literally what you just said to me. And it sounds masturbatory. It sounds like somebody who is just wants to hear their own fucking voice. Now, that said, the language thing, I want to peel back to that, because I have had a peeve about the fact of how language develops. And I don't remember who it is. There was somebody, and I can't think of the example right now. It's been a while since this has happened, but there were several terms. Etymology of new phrases is important to me, because if I understand it and I see how it got into being, then I can accept it as part of the language, part of the, parlance. So, for instance, the term based, right? First time I heard somebody say based, I'm like, what the fuck do you mean based? Like, explain this. But then when somebody explained like based in reality, or based in oh, okay, it's based on good thinking. I got it. That checks out. I can follow along. But there are other examples where words that have always been suddenly have a brand new fucking meaning. And if you are going to use a word in a new way that I have never heard before, right, then I can't understand what you're fucking saying. We cannot have a conversation if we're not using the words to mean the same thing. This is why definitions are important to me, especially in debate. I always go back to definitions. And when I was originally trained in debate, one of the first things you do in a proper debate is you go through your terms. You agree upon the definition of terms, because the rest of the conversation is not going to work if we're talking past each other using different words in different ways. Okay? Now, what you're saying, it sounds like, is that we have to agree on what these words mean for them to have meaning. But if somebody else comes in and has not agreed to our idea of what that word means, and this was why I was asking who decides, you said two people have to decide together. What about the third person who joins the conversation? What about the fourth person? What if those two people decide that the word philosophy means potato chips, and you and I keep having this conversation about philosophy as the study of truth and reality? The rest of this conversation is going to make zero fucking sense to either side. We're, again, wasting our time talking past each other, but an equal number of parties have agreed philosophy is another word for potato chips. So the idea, and I feel like we're getting into, or we're scratching the surface of existentialism, and that was going to be the next question. And I'm hoping Maida is going to be able to explain to me in chat, or that Ancom or even Energy is going to be able to tell me where existentialism rubs up against, what was the other two? Objectivism and relativism. Where does objectivism, relativism line up against all of the isms?
Existentialism?
Existentialism. Thank you.
So existentialism, as I understand it, at least the only real existentialist who I've done a lot of reading on is the philosophy of Martin Heidegger. He's considered a relativist, because he believes that there is no objective truth about being that gives it its essence. Rather, being is disclosed to what he calls Dasein, which is the human subject, basically.
But the universe can be. Universe is being. How does the universe as a being fit into that paradigm?
So he considers being or existence as a whole non-representable.
Well, hold on. We didn't agree to that definition. Earlier, we agreed what being was when we were talking about the universe. Suddenly, we're introducing the word being used in a way that it has not been previously. So we're doing the thing.
Yeah, I mean, he's creating his own etymology, but he believes
we're not allowed to do that. Some other guy said you can't do that.
Well, this is where you get divergence in philosophy. I'm just asking if you're asking for what the existentialist position is. It's that for him, being is not representable, and being is disclosed to the human subject through practical engagement with that. So basically, when I see my phone here, I don't see I can look at the phone in two ways. I can look at it as something detached from me, as like a physical object, and objectify it, or I can look at it as a practical extension of myself, as something that I practically engage with in the world. And when I practically engage with the world, I disclose as an existential truth about the nature of being or existence when I practically engage with that. So it's a kind of a relativist view of meaning because it's based on the subject.
Every single one of my Thursdays since I started doing this, I have had to go back and re-listen to the conversation at least twice to be able to properly fucking process the information dump that I have been going through. I hope that I've at least been able to ask interestingly enough questions throughout this that I don't look like a fucking mouth breathing idiot. Because there are parts of this that I think I'm following, and then all of a sudden I feel like the fucking rug gets pulled out from under my feet. That's.
Maybe Ancom, you can explain existentialism better than I can, because that's my understanding of existentialism from the reading I've done.
Cool. So existentialism, it doesn't really compare to objectivism versus relativism. It more closely compares to positivism and rationalism. So existentialism says that people make decisions based not on rational consideration of the facts as they are, whether they be deduced or derived. So deduced would be rationalism, derived would be positivism, basically. Whether or not you're deducing them from a priori ideas or you are deriving them from your senses, right? So existentialism says both of those are bullshit. People make decisions based on subjective meaning. They look at an apple and say, and they have an idea in their head of what an apple is. That's the subjective definition. And then they decide based on that subjective definition whether or not they want to eat the damn thing. Whereas a rationalist says, sorry.
I would say that for at least the prominent form of existentialism in the 20th century, Heideggerian existentialism, it's also making the ontological claim that existence as such is not essence, or that the essence of an individual thing is not the same as existence, and existence precedes the existence of being precedes the essence of any individual thing, or being is different from
Stop,
big
stop, stop,
capital
stop, stop.
B.
Start over, start over, start over. I'm sorry, you lost me halfway through that. Start over again, please.
So in Heideggerian existentialism, existence as such precedes the essence of any individual thing, because basically being as such, which he capitalizes with a capital B, being, precedes any individual thing. So existence as such precedes this glass or this iPhone or this thing,
Why would
and
the essence of a
existence
thing
is
not be able to exist before the thing itself exists? Because to me, the essence means like the impression of. So I am able to conceive of the existence of an apple even before it exists.
so
Cricket
he would
sound.
say that existence is um, existence is what makes the apple an apple to begin with, and existence precedes the apple.
But the essence of the apple would precede its existence. Especially, correct me if I'm wrong, if we believed in that other dude's idea of the existence of the realm of forms. The essence would
Yeah,
exist
well,
in the realm of forms prior to it actually manifesting in our reality and our perception.
well, he rejected the Platonic idea of the world of forms. He didn't believe that there's this essence that exists outside of existence. He rejected that.
Okay.
And
So
you wanna
yes, the ideas of existentialism say that it is the existence of a thing which brings a subjective essence into being. I have to see the apple before I can conceive of the idea of an apple. The On the other hand, the essentialists would say that an essence of a thing must exist before that thing can come into existence. I realize I'm using the word exist a lot. Let
No,
me
no,
see if
no,
I
no.
can
But that's, I think you
yeah.
just said the thing I was saying. So, yes.
Okay. Yes. So yes, this is just a fundamental disagreement between existentialists and essentialists.
Okay. Okay. So I'm okay. I'm doing the thing. Like,
Yes.
I'm okay. Got
You
it.
are actively engaged in the process of philosophy right now by hearing these ideas and analyzing them in situ and
Pushing
processing
against.
them through your
yeah.
own understanding. You are doing philosophy, and that is the most we can ask of you in this moment.
Thank you, Ancom.
And,
I love you for that.
and you're a smart guy, Radish. I do want you to know, like, even though I don't think you're very knowledgeable about some things, I do think you are definitely have the capacity for critical thinking that I certainly wish every more people would have.
Mm.
Um,
Well,
but yeah, does this make sense
I
that
think
there's
I
a difference
appreciate
between
that. That felt like a backhanded compliment, but I'll take it. Anyways, yeah.
But anyway, do you understand that the difference is that some people believe that the essence of an apple exists before its existence,
Yes.
whereas the existentialists say that the existence of the apple comes first and its essence comes later.
Yes. Now, speaking of
Yeah.
essence, I also want to clarify because this is one of the part of the philosophy thing and what we were just discussing. I am doing. I am a person who is resistant. I'm I am confrontational in nature, and I am a natural. What's the ODD, obsessive defiance disorder. Like, no matter what you say, my inclination is to refute it. Like, no matter what you say is true, I'm going to say, yeah, but. Right. So again, like I don't necessarily believe that the essence of the exact apple existed, except that our perceptions of the essence of the apple existed before this apple was grew from the tree. Now, you're saying that an apple had to have existed at some point. No, you're not saying. This other dude, that guy,
Just
said,
go with existentialism as the
yeah,
idea
there you
rather
go.
than.
Thank you. Well, it's just everybody always wants to quote the fucking names at me, bro, and I don't know who they
This is why
are.
I this
You
is
can
why
call
I
him
try very
Haidi.
hard
You can
not
call him
to
Haidi.
name drop
Yes,
philosophers because it
and I
doesn't do
appreciate
anything for the
that. Yes.
conversation.
All right. So,
Well, it's complicated, but anyway, just call him Heidi.
okay.
Heidi.
Well, like I said, we'll go with existentialists. So, an
Okay.
existentialist would say that an apple had to have existed before I could perceive of the concept of an apple. But the first time somebody encountered an apple, they understood that it was an apple. Not just because they labeled it, they just simply used the word apple to associate it with the thing that they are experiencing. So if the thing could have existed before I experienced it, then it stands to reason that the thing could have existed before it was experienceable. So even before it manifested into existence, the thing could potentially be perceivable even before it has been perceived. Right?
I
Congratulations,
would say
you're now a official philosopher.
I need drugs.
I would say one could look at a different kind of tree, a pine tree,
And
for
extrapolate.
yeah, and see that a pine tree creates pine cones. Pine cones grow off the pine tree, and there is some relationship between the pine tree and the pine cone, and they could extrapolate maybe there are other kinds of trees, and maybe these other kinds of trees have other kinds of objects that are analogous to the relationship between the pine tree and the pine cone, and perhaps they could come up with the general idea of a different kind of fruit, whether it be an apple or a pear or a peach or whatever you have, and could, in theory, observe what exists and extrapolate to something else that could exist based on the same basic relationships. Now,
I guess I feel like this. I feel like
this
this is a Schrodinger's cat thing, though. That's what I'm getting at. I'm
So
saying even before I perceived it, it was there. Sorry, go on.
What I want to drill in here is the concept of the essence, which I dislike as a concept. It's too wishy-washy for me, but the concept of the essence is the core distinction between the existentialists and the essentialists. The essentialists go kind of off Plato. They say there is a world of forms. These forms are the core essence of all things that exists separate from the material, and that all things have some connection to the Platonic ideal, that's where we get that term from, of the thing. So there is a Platonic idea of ideal of an apple that exists in this world of forms as an essence, and then the apples that we have are connected to that. Whereas the existentialist says the apple has to exist first, and the essence exists only in the mind of the people experiencing the apple. So it does not exist separately in a hypothetical world of form. It is purely a mind-dependent phenomenon, and that we assign the essence in our minds to the material of the apple. That is the core difference between the two. It's not necessarily saying that A or B must be the case. It's just different ideas about how we connect idea to material, whether the idea existed prior to the material or whether we created it in our experience.
Yeah, and the part of the reason I think sometimes it's important to give credit with names is that sometimes while we can explain to you, and while I think I have explained to you, my understanding of the history of philosophy is much, just know that no matter what explanation I give for how long, it's just not going to be the same thing as reading the book and the original like writing. So like you don't have to, and I don't expect you to, but just know if you ever do become interested in exploring these lines of thinking further, I would recommend engaging with original source material. But that's all I'll say about that. But yes, I hope you understand that that not everyone thinks that there's this essence in the world of forms, and not all philosophers agree with that. My personal view, and this is part of the thing with like me being non-binary and stuff, in my view of like gender, is like no, I think that these are largely linguistic constructs that come after the fact, and that there is no objective essence. That language is a tool, imprecise tool for communicating our expectations on things, but we don't have access to some sort of the immutable world of forms, and I think that's a very dogmatic way of thinking.
I feel like I agree with the vast majority of what you just said, for what it's worth, except for the whole read a philosophy book thing. That's the only part you said that I disagree with. But I do understand why you say it, and I understand the idea behind it. I will always continue holding to the fact that I would rather do what we have done here tonight, and since we're coming up on the tail end of it here, and I'm about to dip us out. I have enjoyed the fuck out of this from both of you. Again, even despite the little flare up there in the middle. And I apologize again that I allowed that to happen, or that I facilitated that interaction as it did. But this right here, I feel like is far more interesting for a human interaction than for me to try to interact and engage intellectually with people who have been dead for 2,000 years. I would rather somebody who agrees with or believes what Socrates said, to engage with me, and I then get to engage with that person for their beliefs so that they don't get, when I poke a hole in their logic, they don't get to dodge behind, well, I mean, Socrates said it. So I would rather engage with these ideas in real time from real people and have, what is it, secretion, dialectical, I would rather have a fucking conversation about it than to read a
Socratic
book.
dialogue.
Thank you. Yes, I would rather engage in the Socratic dialogue and actually try to figure this shit out for ourselves. But I also have to say that what y'all just said and kind of what I inherently was intuiting, my intuition, and the reason that I asked for both of y'all to give me a philosophy that has been born in the last 100 years that was not based on a previous one, I didn't actually think y'all would be able to. And that's why the one that you proposed, Energy, I immediately started finding threads back to previous things we've discussed, because it kind of comes back to the whole everything's been said before, everything's been done before, nothing is actually new, it's just a variation of a theme, that there are small changes that happen along the way, but pretty much at this point somebody has probably fucking thought of it before, and the likelihood of anybody having a brand new thought, like, I don't even think that Socrates was the first one to have those thoughts. Socrates might have just been the first one to chisel it into a fucking stone tablet, right? That doesn't mean that the Neanderthals, or maybe they weren't capable. I don't fucking know. Maybe we don't. Maybe they were. Who the hell knows, right? The point is that I would rather engage with ideas from a person and build off of them in real time, push back against those ideas with people who hold those ideas so that they can give me feedback on their actual interpretation or understanding. And hopefully we can find new paths to tread that way. So, and I feel like you guys have both given me that tonight, so I appreciate that.
And I'll just say, just to wrap this up, in my view, you should do smartness like actual people do. Actual smart people do smartness, which is engage with the actual canon of actual smart people throughout history. But I'll leave it at that.
Yep, and I believe I have faith in my fellow man to be actual smart people too, because again, there were several times throughout this where we were able to come to our own understandings and conclusions that turned out to mirror conclusions and understandings that came about a few thousand years ago, and we were able to do it here all by ourselves, even without wearing robes. So that seems like a big deal. So, all right.
Who are you gonna? Is Lethe live or?
That's a great question. No, I doubt it. Lethe isn't generally going to be in my chat if he is out there live. You know what? Everybody knows Non-Fon. Even though Non-Fon doesn't want to debate with us, Non-Fon is still funny and entertaining. Oh, Tokahannis is also. Hey, you know what? We haven't been able to raid out to Tokahannis in a hot minute, so let's go ahead and give her some views. And there's a good chance she's going to try and make a second appearance or another appearance here in the DMZ soon. Speaking of which, everybody remember, tomorrow night we are having our first ever inaugural Friday night DMZ, and it is going to be a 3v3. We're doing things a little bit differently, but we're going to have a Friday night and a Saturday night DMZ this week, and probably from now on. Both of them are going to be at 7 o'clock Pacific Standard Time, but I will be going live on Saturday at 6, so that way I'm just going to sit here and bullshit with anybody who trickles in. So the people who are used to showing up at 6, you're not just going to be looking at nothing. So, Ancom, thank you very much for jumping in and helping to clarify. Absolutely, thank you, Energy, for hanging out. Again, I want to be very clear. I enjoyed this way more than I was prepared to, and this has been a very, very, very productive conversation with all of us. So, cheers, everybody. Have a great night. Toot toot. And now that we're technically not live anymore, a straight shout out to you guys. Thank you both very, very much. I am going to go crash out and have a great night.
All good. Have a good one.
Appreciate you. See y'all tomorrow. Toot toot.
Shout out to Horseradish, guys. Please go follow. We will be having a debate the end of this month, the last Saturday of this month. So please go follow him to catch that debate. Welcome in, Raiders. Welcome in. How is everyone? Thank you for the follow. Please go follow Horseradish as well. Don't forget. Lethy! Good to see everybody. Hello. Thank you guys. Welcome, welcome. Welcome to the Aloha Gang. Don't forget to join the Discord. Keep up on all our stream schedule updates. Oh, yes, I did see them. I will definitely do that tomorrow when I get off the stream.